Chapter 1963. The middle-aged man's words caused everyone in the surroundings to be stunned. Damn it! Whether the border realm is hospitable or not depends entirely on their strength. Yi Xian was quite stunned as well. He'd thought that the middle-aged man would go crazy and try to kill him. So that wasn't the case. That's a little out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. "Young brother, are you interested in going to our border realm?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. "What's your name?" The middle-aged man replied, "Nakayama of Silla." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Nakayama of Silla?" The middle-aged man nodded. "I'm Nakayama of Silla from Daolin Kingdom." "Do you know Daolin Kingdom?" "Oh, you definitely don't. But that's fine. I can tell you that it's called the Border Realm, and our Daolin Kingdom is named after it. Do you understand?" All of them were speechless. Nakayama of Silla gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. "Young brother, this world is too limited. Moreover, its martial Dao civilization is too low, and it's truly not suitable for development. Are you interested in going to the border realm with me?" When he spoke up to this point, he glanced at Gu Chou. "You can go as well." Gu Chou hesitated for a moment and said, "All of us can go?" Nakayama of Silla shook his head. "I can only take 3 people with me." 3 people? All of them had strange expressions on their faces. Did this fellow come here just to pick people? Gu Chou gazed at Yi Xian. "Are you going?" Yi Xian gazed at Nakayama of Silla. "Can we choose not to go?" Nakayama of Silla smiled. "Of course. However, I have to remind all of you that you killed that old man. Do you know who he is? He's a member of the enforcement sect, and it won't be long before the enforcement sect arrives. At that time, they won't be as easy to talk to as I am." Gu Chou was astounded. "So all of you aren't on the same side?" Nakayama of Silla spoke seriously. "Of course. Everyone, so this guy wasn't in cahoots with the old man." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Senior, why did you bring us here?" Nakayama of Silla laughed and said, "I think we are wasting time now. I have to remind all of you that the members of the Daolin Enforcement Sect will arrive in another 10 minutes. At that time, all of you will have to face numerous extraordinary experts." Hearing this, Gu Chou's face suddenly became a little ugly. Nakayama of Silla looked at Yi Xian. "Especially you. If they find out that you killed their men, they will never let you off. If you are willing to go to the Dao Boundary Realm with me, I can settle this for you." Yi Xian and Gu Chou looked at each other. Gu Chou said solemnly, "I'll go." Nakayama of Silla looked at Yi Xian. "What about you?" Yi Xian laughed bitterly. "Do I have any other choice?" Nakayama of Silla smiled slightly. "I don't think so." At this moment, Fan Jian suddenly said, "Sir, don't you have another spot?" Nakayama of Silla sized Fan Jian up. "You want to go?" Fan Jian nodded. Nakayama of Silla laughed. "Give me a reason." Fan Jian glanced at Gu Chou and Yi Xian. "Why did you choose them?" Nakayama of Silla pointed at Gu Chou. "Because he is a genius. With a little nurturing, a super genius will appear in our Daolin nation." Fan Jian pointed at Yi Xian. "What about him?" Nakayama of Silla glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. "There are people behind him. If there are people behind you, they can go with me." Everyone, this chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Fan Jian's expression was slightly unnatural. At this moment, a Mingji saint behind Fan Jian suddenly said, "Sir, if you were to choose one of them, who would you choose? Gu Chou? Yi Xian?" Everyone looked at Nakayama of Silla. Nakayama of Silla suddenly waved his right hand. Bang! The Mingji saint who spoke was directly eliminated. Nakayama of Silla laughed. "What kind of trash is this? He doesn't have any strength, yet he dares to sow discord in front of me. Really?" The Mingji saints behind Fan Jian didn't dare to speak anymore. Nakayama of Silla looked at Yi Xian and Gu Chou. He smiled. "We don't have much time left. Let's go." Gu Chou turned to look at the evil tribe members. From now on, Gu Bo will be the evil tribe leader. Hearing this, the evil tribe members wanted to say something. Gu Chou suddenly said, "This is my choice. Don't worry, I will be back. The evil tribe members looked at each other and then knelt down in unison. Farewell, tribe leader. They naturally knew that this was a chance for Gu Chou to change her fate. Gu Chou changing her fate was equivalent to the evil tribe changing their fate. This was great news. Gu Chou nodded slightly and then looked at Nakayama of Silla. Let's go. Nakayama of Silla smiled. All right. As he spoke, he led Yi Xian and Gu Chou towards the sky. Fan Jian and the others had gloomy expressions as they watched Yi Xian and the others leave. No one knew what they were thinking. Shui Linglong looked at Yi Xian, who was in the sky, and just looked at him. After passing through the stone door, Yi Xian and the others started moving swiftly. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Senior, why did you kill the Snow Mountain King? Nakayama of Silla smiled. He was too arrogant and full of himself. There was no point in keeping him alive. Gu Chou said, Those with a bit of ability are definitely a bit arrogant. The Prince of Zhongshan faintly smiled. What you say is correct, but in our eyes he doesn't have much ability. Gu Chou smiled bitterly. I think he is better than me. Nakayama of Silla shook his head. Not necessarily. He has cultivated longer than you. If you were in the same generation as him, you would not lose to him. Moreover, your temperament is better. Yi Xian suddenly said. What about me? Nakayama of Silla glanced at Yi Xian. You are very mysterious. I cannot see through you. Yi Xian said. Then why did you bring me to Daoji? Nakayama of Silla smiled. Just treat it as a good karma. Yi Xian was about to speak. At this moment, 3 powerful auras appeared in the distance. Nakayama of Silla spoke abruptly. Both of you don't need to say anything. I'll do it. As soon as he finished speaking, 3 old men in black robes appeared in front of them. The old man in the lead gazed at Nakayama of Silla. So it's Nakayama of Silla. Nakayama of Silla smiled. So it's Elder Gu Yi from the law enforcement sect. The old man called Gu Yi glanced at Gu Chou and Yi Xian. Nakayama of Silla, who are they? Nakayama of Silla smiled. Now that you mention it, I think of something. The 3 of you want to head down there, right? Gu Yi nodded. Our people died down there. The 3 of us. Nakayama of Silla hurriedly said, I killed them. Gu Yi looked at Nakayama of Silla. Kill them? Nakayama of Silla nodded. It's that Snow Mountain King. You should know this person. He dared to say that he wanted to compete for our Dao border's resources. He's really reckless. Saying that, he spread out his palm and then gently wiped it. An image appeared in front of everyone. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Before. It was the process of him killing the Snow Mountain King, but there was no sound. Seeing Nakayama of Silla kill the Snow Mountain King, Gu Yi and the other 2 looked at each other. Finally, Gu Yi said in a deep voice, Is it really this Snow Mountain King who killed our people? Snow Mountain King nodded. Yes. Saying that, he sighed. Unfortunately, I was too late. Otherwise, I would have been able to save your people. Gu Yi glanced at them and Gu Chou. These 2 are, Snow Mountain King smiled. 2 interesting little guys. Their qualifications are not bad. You also know that my Daolin state has been lacking people recently. So, there's no way. Gu Yi nodded slightly. Understood. Nakayama of Silla hesitated, then said with a smile. That, you see, I helped your people get revenge, don't you want to say something? Hearing this, Yi Xian and Gu Chou's expressions became strange. Damn it. Why is this guy like this? Gu Yi and the other 2's expressions also became strange. Gu Yi hesitated, then said, Nakayama of Silla? Nakayama of Silla smiled. Not much. Just give me 10 divine ranges. Not much, right? Hearing this, Gu Yi's expression changed drastically. Nakayama of Silla, you are asking for too much. You want 10 divine ranges to kill one of your subordinates? Why don't you just rob them? Nakayama of Silla said. Then 5. Gu Yi said angrily. Impossible. Nakayama of Silla, we didn't ask you to kill for us. You killed them yourself. Nakayama of Silla still wanted to say something, but Gu Yi flicked his sleeve. Farewell. With that, he turned around and left with the two beside him. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the horizon. Nakayama of Silla looked into the distance and remained silent. Gucho asked, "Senior, are you still worried?" Nakayama of Silla said softly, "Just now, that old man looked at you too a few times." Speaking of this, he looked at Yixian. "Little guy, I may not be able to protect you. Because next, they will definitely go down to investigate, and the fact that you killed that old man will definitely be exposed." Yixian fell silent. Nakayama of Silla said, "You have to go." Yixian smiled bitterly. "Go where?" Nakayama of Silla said in a low voice. "There is only one force that doesn't fear the law enforcement sect. That is Spiritual Mountain. You have to go to Spiritual Mountain. As long as you can join Spiritual Mountain, and Spiritual Mountain is willing to protect you, then you will be fine." Yixian frowned slightly. "Spiritual Mountain?" Nakayama of Silla nodded. He took out a letter and handed it to Yixian. "I know an elder of Spiritual Mountain. Her name is Yen Banshan. Go find her and find a way to become her disciple. As long as you can become her disciple, then you won't have to fear the law enforcement sect." Yixian was about to speak when Nakayama of Silla suddenly said, "Little brother, we are leaving." With that, he disappeared with Gucho. Yixian was dumbfounded. On the other side, Gucho said in a low voice, "Senior, why?" Nakayama of Silla sighed in a low voice. "It's not that I don't want to protect him, but I really can't. Your brother is not simple, especially the sword in his hand. That sword not only exceeds the scope of your world, but also the scope of our critical realm." As he said that, he turned his head and looked at the others. He said softly, "I also want to ride on his coattails, but there are too many people behind me. I don't want to gamble with the lives of my own people. Let him go and harm Spirit Mountain. P.S. Recently, I have been saving the manuscript. Write 3 chapters, publish 2, and keep 1. In this way, the manuscript can be saved slowly. Perfect. End of this chapter. Chapter 1964. Spirited Mountain. Yixian was stunned when he arrived at Spirited Mountain. Spirited Mountain was just a small hill, and if it wasn't for a tattered wooden sign with the words Spirited Mountain written on it, he would definitely think that he'd gone the wrong way. There were only a few thatched cottages on the hill. Spirited Mountain? Yixian felt that it was more suitable to call it Pasan. What should I do? Yixian fell silent for a long time before he walked towards Spirited Mountain in the end. Since I'm already here, I should go up and take a look, right? When he arrived at the peak of Spirited Mountain, a tattered thatched cottage entered his eyes, and an old man was sweeping the ground before it. The old man wore very simple clothes, and his hair was white. He seemed extremely old. Yixian's expression shook when he saw this. Based on his past experience, any old man who swept the ground in such a place was basically a peerless expert. Yixian walked over to the old man and bowed slightly. "Greetings, senior." The old man didn't even spare a glance at Yixian, and he just ignored him and continued sweeping. Yixian didn't feel embarrassed at all. He glanced at the surroundings and said, "Senior, are you the only one on Spirited Mountain?" The old man still didn't speak. Meanwhile, Yixian withdrew the green profound sword and passed it to the old man. "Senior, do you think this sword of mine looks nice?" The old man stopped sweeping. He gazed at the sword with a calm expression, and he didn't speak as well. Yixian said with a serious expression, "Senior, feel it." As he spoke, he passed the sword to the old man. The old man glanced at Yixian but still didn't speak. Yixian was about to speak when the old man suddenly grabbed the sword. A short moment later, his brows knit together slightly, and then he swiftly let go of the sword. After that, he gazed at Yixian silently. Yixian spoke in a low voice. "Senior, I'm a member of Spirited Mountain from now on." As he spoke, he scanned his surroundings. Soon, he arrived in front of a thatched hut. Inside the hut were 5 or 6 memorial tablets. Yixian did not care and bowed slightly. "Greetings, ancestral masters. From now on, I, Yixian, am a member of Spiritual Mountain. Don't worry, ancestral masters, I will revitalize Spirited Mountain." Behind him, the old man furrowed his brows. However, as if he had thought of something, he glanced at the green profound sword in front of him. Soon, his brows slowly relaxed. At that moment, a terrifying aura suddenly came from the sky. However, when the aura was about to approach the spiritual mountain, it suddenly disappeared without a trace. An old man had appeared at the foot of the mountain. It was Elder Gu Yi of the law enforcement sect. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw Gu. This fellow really went down to investigate. Gu Yi looked coldly at Yi Xian, then looked at the old man in front of Yi Xian. He cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, Elder Xian." Junior. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched slightly. This old man was really a super mighty figure. Elder Xian glanced at Gu Yi and did not speak. Gu Yi hesitated for a moment and then said, "Elder Xian, this young man killed someone from my law enforcement sect." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Sir, I am now a member of Spiritual Mountain." Gu Yi was slightly stunned and then became furious. "How is that possible? How could Spiritual Mountain accept you?" Yi Xian spread out his hands. "I just joined Spiritual Mountain." Gu Yi stared at Yi Xian. "Spiritual Mountain has not accepted anyone for 3 million years. How could they accept someone like you?" Yi Xian said angrily, "I'm joining unilaterally, can't I?" Hearing this, Gu Yi was stunned. Unilaterally joining? What kind of operation was this? Elder Xian could not help but glance at Yi Xian. A subtle change finally appeared on his calm face. Gu Yi stared at Yi Xian. If this guy was not on Spiritual Mountain, he would have made a move long ago. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. He also wanted to make a move, but he did not dare. This was Spiritual Mountain. He could not bear the consequences. But what puzzled him was why Elder Xian tolerated this guy's unreasonable pestering on Spiritual Mountain. At this time, Elder Xian continued to sweep the floor. Gu Yi looked at Yi Xian, his face a little ugly. "Yi Xian, they did not say that they would accept you. How can you have the face to stay up there? Don't you have any shame?" Yi Xian said angrily, "What's the use of this thing? Tell me, what's the use of it?" Gu Yi was stunned. Damn. He had lived for thousands of years, and this was the first time he had seen such a shameless person. What kind of weirdo is this? Elder Xian, who was sweeping the floor, could not help but look at Yi Xian again. Gu ignored Yi Xian and looked at Elder Xian instead. "Elder Xian, the sect master asked me to bring this person back." This. Elder Xian was expressionless. "You are not allowed to fight in the Spiritual Mountain." Gu Yi was a little troubled. Was the Spiritual Mountain going to protect this guy? Not allowed to fight? There was no way that Yi Xian would go with him obediently. Thinking until here, he looked at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, the Spiritual Mountain did not accept you as a disciple, but you are still here. Aren't you embarrassed?" Yi Xian said, "Of course I am." Gu Yi said angrily, "Can you be more shameless?" Yi Xian said, "I am shameless." Gu Yi's expression froze, and his lungs almost exploded. What kind of weirdo is this? After a while, Gu Yi gradually calmed down. He realized that something was wrong. Why did Elder Xian allow Yi Xian to cause trouble on Spiritual Mountain? That was the crux of the problem. Yi Xian did not care about Gu. He turned around and walked to the side, then sat down cross-legged and entered Xiaoda. Cultivate. To him, the most important thing was to increase his strength as soon as possible. Strength was the way to go. Seeing Yi Xian enter Xiao to cultivate, Gu Yi's expression turned ugly. Gu Yi looked at the old man and hesitated. "Elder Xian you?" Elder Xian ignored him and turned around to continue sweeping the floor. After a moment of silence, a ruthless look flashed in Gu Yi's eyes. He decided to give it a try. Since Elder Xian could let Yi Xian cause trouble on Spiritual Mountain, Elder Xian might not attack him even if he attacked. Be bold. Thinking until here, Gu Yi suddenly disappeared and went straight to where Yi Xian was on Spiritual Mountain. Just as he was about to approach Yi Xian, Elder Xian suddenly flicked his sleeves. Boom! A white light flashed, and Gu Yi was sent back to his original position. When he stopped, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Gu Yi was stunned. He looked at Elder Xian on the mountain. "Elder Xian?" Elder Xian looked at Gu Yi coldly. "If you attack again, I'll destroy your soul." Gu Yi was a little confused. What? Elder Xian? Why didn't you attack him? But to me, Elder Xian looked at Gu Yi and narrowed his eyes. Get lost. Gu Yi was shocked and didn't dare to say anything else. He immediately turned around and left. On Spiritual Mountain, Elder Xian glanced at the place where he was sitting and remained silent. On the other side of the mountain range, Gu Yi stopped and his expression was extremely ugly. After a moment, he turned around and looked in the direction of Spiritual Mountain, then turned around and left. This matter was no longer something he could handle, because now Spiritual Mountain had made it clear that they wanted to protect Yi Xian. On Spiritual Mountain, inside Xiaota, Yi Xian felt a little pain in the ass because this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Now that he was at the life-body realm, not to mention at the Dao boundary, even below it, his realm was very low. And at this critical level, it was even lower than that. He had to find a way to improve his realm and soar Dao. Cultivation. In the following time, Yi Xian began to cultivate crazily. Anyway, he had enough cultivation resources. After the fall of the Snow Mountain King, all his resources had fallen into his hands. Now, he was as rich as a country. Inside Xiaota, cultivation knew no time. In the blink of an eye, decades had passed. At this moment, he had reached the life-soul realm. Next, he began to break through to the life-god realm. While cultivating, he did not stay idle. He walked around the entire Spiritual Mountain. Of course, Spiritual Mountain was not big to begin with. And in a straw hut on Spiritual Mountain, he found some ancient books. They were not martial arts techniques, but some miscellaneous books. From these books, he had a rough understanding of this boundary and Spiritual Mountain. This boundary of martial arts civilization was considered to be level 9, which was the highest known civilization except for the God Realm civilization. Below this boundary, there were countless universes. However, the people in these universes were all sealed by this boundary. Just like the burial zone, the people below could not sense the existence of this boundary, and the boundary of Dao boundary had no interest in the lower realm. In fact, Dao boundary used to be a civilization below level 9. However, for a period of time, a super genius appeared in Dao boundary, Jun Daolin. This person created an unprecedented realm, None. What was None? It was to completely jump out of the realm and not be bound by the realm. My heart is at ease. My mind is at ease. My body is at ease. My soul is at ease. My Dao is at ease. What was freedom? Ignoring space and time. Ignoring time. Ignoring life. Ignoring the great Dao. Jumping out of everything, thus being freedom. This was the martial arts concept that Jun Daolin had proposed. And he was also the first peerless expert in history to jump out of the realm and reach great freedom. Limitless realm. Precisely because of this, he brought Dao boundary to become a level 9 civilization. Dao boundary was not originally called Dao boundary, but to commemorate this peerless expert, this world was renamed Dao boundary. Ever since Jun Daolin, no one else had reached limitless realm. Because it was too difficult. Even Dao boundary's legendary figure, Dao Ling, had only reached half-step limitless realm, and Dao Ling was the founder of Spirit Mountain. Dao Ling was also a super terrifying existence. It was said that she had used less than 30 years to reach half-step limitless realm. Seeing this, Yi Xian could not help but sweat. 30 years. Damn it. What kind of cheat is this? Dao Ling was also the peerless expert who had the highest chance of reaching limitless realm. However, 1,000,000 years ago, Dao Ling suddenly left Spirit Mountain, leaving only one disciple behind. That day, everyone thought that Dao Ling had reached limitless realm, but when she left, there was no movement at all. No one knew where she went, and no one knew if she had reached limitless realm. Inside the straw hut, Yi Xian closed the ancient book in his hands and fell silent. Limitless realm. He turned to look at the sky outside the straw hut, and a trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. This limitless realm of Dao boundary seemed to be a little close to Qing and his father. Was his life as a second generation coming to an end? Would his father be beaten to death by others? The green-robed man. End of this chapter. Chapter 1965. The days of cultivation were boring, but no matter how boring it was, he still had to cultivate. Yixian already felt pressured when he had learned about this borderline. Even if this boundary wasn't at the level of his father and Qing, it was definitely close. In other words, his life as a second generation might never return. What was worth mentioning was that while Yixian was cultivating, Yang Yanxue had already reached the life-knowing state. Just as he expected, Sister Xue's life-knowing state was not an ordinary life-knowing state. Her current level was even higher than the 12 life-knowing saints, perhaps only below the King of Snow Mountain and Guqiu. Other than that, Xuwang had also reached the life-knowing state. Yixian didn't let the two girls out because it was too dangerous outside. However, he didn't expect Sister Xue to sneak out. He was furious. Xiaota said, "Young master, instead of worrying about the Snow Lord, you should worry about yourself. Anyway, from what I know, the Snow Lord is Master's favorite. Master will never let her be in danger. As for you, you know." Yixian's face darkened. "Know your sister." If not for the fact that he had to cultivate in Xiaota's body, he would have sold Xiao. Ignoring the broken tower, Yixian started cultivating with Xuwang. He decided to nurture Xuwang into a super swordsman. He was one of them. He had to be nurtured well. About 10 years later, Yixian reached the life god realm. On this day, Yixian, who had reached the life god realm, left the tiny pagoda. He roasted a lamb and brought it to Elder Xian. He realized that Elder Xian did nothing but sweep the floor every day. Yixian tore off a lamb leg and passed it to Elder Xian. "Elder Xian, eat." Elder Xian looked at Yixian and didn't refuse. He took the lamb leg and started eating. Yixian looked around and asked, "Elder Xian, are you the only one on Spiritual Mountain?" Elder Xian said, "There's one more." Yixian was a little curious. "Who is it?" Elder Xian didn't say anything. Yixian laughed. "Elder Xian, can I ask you a few questions?" Elder Xian still didn't speak. Yixian asked, "Elder Xian, in the world below us, destiny awareness is the highest known state. Can you tell us about the state system here?" As he spoke, he tore off a leg of lamb and passed it to Elder Xian. Elder Xian didn't reject it. After taking a few bites, he said, "Heartless, thoughtless, bodiless, soulless, Daoist, nihility." Yixian frowned slightly. The limitless realm is the limitless realm that Jun Daolin attained all those years ago? Elder Xian nodded. Yixian glanced at Elder Xian. "What realm is Elder Xian?" Elder Xian didn't say anything. Yixian was tactful and didn't probe further. Soon, the two of them devoured the goat cleanly in no time. When they were done, Yixian rose to his feet and returned to the pagoda to cultivate. Suddenly, Elder Xian asked, "That sword of yours?" The corner of Yixian's mouth twitched. This old man couldn't resist asking after all. Yixian turned to Elder Xian and said seriously, "Elder Xian, are you interested in this sword?" Elder Xian glanced at the azure profound sword in Yixian's hand. "Danger! Danger!" Yixian fell silent. It was obvious that Elder Xian had sensed Qing from the azure profound sword when he touched it. But he was a little puzzled. With Qing strength, no one should be able to sense her. Could it be that Qing has been paying attention to me all this time? Yixian's heart was filled with joy. Elder Xian suddenly said, "Don't go down the mountain." With that, he turned and left. "Go down the mountain." Yixian turned and looked down the mountain. Soon, he sensed a powerful aura in the mountains. Qingqing, Yi family's ancestral shrine. Ancestors above, Yixian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yixian's position as crown prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The speaker was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This young man was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. The little girl's name was Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian, she ignored her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl named Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral shrine and said timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. "This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was afraid and didn't dare to look at the Great Elder, but she didn't leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral shrine. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family for the mining rights in Nanshan. He's fighting for the family, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. But the family is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is really unfair." "Impudent," the Great Elder suddenly said angrily. "It's not up to a little girl like you to decide whether to discard him or not. Men, drag her away." At this moment, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly smiled and said, "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder said coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi family rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the family. The family is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew it was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. Why are you shouting?" He raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. The right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. But she didn't cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "I'm Zhang Mu." "Greetings, Crown Prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're good. After I become the Crown Prince, I'll need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "I'm willing to go through fire and water for the Crown Prince." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy. Do you understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking toward the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger, leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man." "How dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, No virtue? From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair." "Impudent!" The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She just held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "This subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man." "How dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Peng! Chapter 1966. Yi Xian glanced at the old man who pointed in that direction. In the next moment, a sword suddenly flashed. The old man's expression changed drastically. He suddenly clenched his right hand, and then a powerful force swept out from his palm. The green profound sword slashed down. The green profound sword pierced through the old man's palm, and a strand of fresh blood sprayed out. However, the old man had already turned around and fled. The other old man had fled as well. Yi Xian fell silent when he saw this. If a heartless expert didn't fight him and only wanted to flee, then it would be difficult for him to instantly kill the expert unless he caught the expert off guard. So long as the expert was on guard, then it would be difficult for him to instantly kill the expert. A short moment later, Yi Xian turned around and walked back to Spirited Mountain. When he returned to Spirited Mountain, Elder Xian suddenly asked, "How did you cultivate so quickly?" Yi Xian smiled. "An extraordinary genius." He naturally wouldn't expose Xiao Ta's secret. What a joke! Xiao Ta's ability was heaven-defying. Once it was exposed, then there would probably be countless troubles. Don't expose your wealth. Elder Xian gazed at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian took out another lamb to roast, and then he said, "Senior, what sort of power is the law enforcement sect?" He'd already formed a grudge with the law enforcement sect, so he had to get to know this power well. Elder Xian fell silent for a short moment before he said, "I don't know." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "You don't know?" Elder Xian nodded. "I haven't left the mountain for many years." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "You wouldn't be sweeping here every single day, right?" Elder Xian smiled. "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "How many years have you been sweeping for?" Elder Xian thought for a moment and said, 9 million years. Yi Xian's expression froze when he heard this. Sweeping for 9 million years? How terrifying! Elder Xian glanced at Yi Xian. "The mountain master has returned. Go down the mountain." Yi Xian frowned. "Is it Mountain Lord Yan of Mount Yanbian?" Elder Xian nodded. "That girl's temper isn't very good. She might not like you, so it's best that you leave the mountain." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why don't you like me?" Elder Xian said, "You talk a lot, and you're very flowery." Yi Xian was speechless. At this time, Elder Xian said, "Why did you come to our Xian mountain?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, "Nakayama of Silla told me to come. He told me to become Miss Bian Shan's disciple." Elder Xian furrowed his brow. "Nakayama of Silla?" Yi Xian nodded. Elder Xian remained silent for a moment before saying, "He might be trying to trick you." Yi Xian was speechless. Elder Xian said, "The Mountain Lord has a bad temper. Furthermore, she will never accept you as her disciple." Yi Xian frowned. "Am I not outstanding enough?" Elder Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, "You're indeed not outstanding enough." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Does this old man know how to speak?" Elder Xian said again, "Let's go." Yi Xian thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right." As he spoke, he stood up, bowed slightly, then turned and walked down the mountain. But after a while, he returned to Elder Xian. Elder Xian looked at Yi Xian. "What are you doing?" Yi Xian pointed at the foot of the mountain. "There are many experts from the law enforcement sect." Elder Xian turned his head to look. At the foot of the mountain, 2 elders and a middle-aged man had appeared out of nowhere. The middle-aged man wore a dark golden robe and held a long halberd in his hand. Elder Xian said, "Thoughtless state." Yi Xian nodded. "He's much stronger than Gu Yi just now." Elder Xian looked at Yi Xian, but did not speak. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, "Can I stay here for a few more days?" Just 5 days. Elder Xian said, "Up to you." Yi Xian was overjoyed. At this moment, Elder Xian said, "But I have to remind you that the Mountain Lord might return at any time. Once she does, you might be in big trouble." Mountain Lord? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, "I shouldn't be that unlucky." With that, he turned and walked into a straw hut, then began cultivating. This time, he did not choose to break through to the thoughtless state. Instead, he cultivated his flying sword of life and death. When he attacked just now, he realized that his flying sword of life and death could actually be faster, especially since the green profound sword had been strengthened. Moreover, it could ignore time and space. Fast. His goal was very simple. It could be described in one word: fast. Extremely fast. At the foot of the Spirit Mountain, the middle-aged man with the long halberd looked at the Spirit Mountain. No one knew what he was thinking. An old man said in a low voice, "Elder Gu, the Spirit Mountain intends to protect Yi Xian." Elder Gu's face was expressionless. "Then what can you do?" The old man's expression was slightly unsightly. They really couldn't do anything. There were very few people on the Spirit Mountain, only 2. However, no power in the entire burial zone dared to offend them rashly. Besides the invincible Dao Ling from all those years ago, even Yan Bianshan was a terrifying figure. Elder Gu looked at the Spirit Mountain and said softly, "According to what I know, that young man was only at the life-body realm before this. However, he attained the life-knowledge realm in a short period of half a month. Moreover, he was able to instantly kill Elder Gu Yi. Even though he killed Elder Gu Yi by surprise, he's still not simple." The old man nodded. "The main reason is the sword in his hand. We've analyzed it before. There are 3 reasons why Elder Gu Yi was killed. First, he underestimated Yi Xian's strength. Second, he wasn't on guard and was killed by Yi Xian by surprise. Third, it's because of the sword in Yi Xian's hand. That sword can ignore the space-time prison that Elder Gu Yi set up. In fact, the most important thing is that sword. That sword is really special." Elder Gu said softly, "It's hard to imagine that such a terrifying sword could appear in the world below." The old man nodded. "We're also doing our best to investigate the sword's origin." Elder Gu looked at the old man. "Have you found anything?" The old man said in a low voice, "This sword was made by a woman, and it's said that she's Yi Xian's sister." Elder Gu frowned. "That's it?" The old man nodded. "We've investigated a lot about Yi Xian, but that plain-dressed woman," Elder Gu said, "you can't find her?" The old man nodded. "We can't find her at all. However, we've received news that if you obtain the sword in Yi Xian's hand, you'll be able to sense the plain-dressed woman through the sword." Elder Gu frowned. "That's possible?" The old man nodded. "Yes. As long as you hold the sword in his hand, you'll be able to sense the woman who made it through the sword." Elder Gu nodded. "Understood." On Mount Ling, inside Xiaota, Yi Xian had been practicing the flying sword to determine life and death every day. In order to reach the maximum speed of his sword, he entered the mysterious space-time abyss to practice. When he was practicing inside, he realized that it had a miraculous effect. In the mysterious space-time abyss, the space-time density was extremely thick. The speed of the green profound sword in the mysterious space-time abyss was different from the outside world. In there, its speed was several times slower. In fact, Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Logically speaking, the green profound sword could ignore the mysterious space-time, so why was it slower in the space-time abyss? He did not think too much about it. In any case, he would practice it first. He also let Su Wang practice with him. He also taught Su Wang the flying sword soul fixation. He had never thought of holding back when it came to this girl. After all, they were on the same side. Keep the goodies within the family. In the following days, Yi Xian practiced crazily every day. In the space-time abyss, his flying sword's speed became faster and faster. His goal was to make the flying sword's speed in the space-time abyss be as fast as the outside world. If he could cultivate the sword's speed to be as fast as the outside world, then after he left this mysterious space-time, his flying sword's speed would be At the thought of this, Yi Xian could not help but feel excited. Just like that, days passed and in the blink of an eye, more than 10 years had passed. After more than 10 years of hard work, the speed of Yi Xian's flying sword was already as fast as the outside world. After leaving the mysterious abyss, Yi Xian's mind moved and the sword suddenly appeared 10,000 feet away. Looking at the green profound sword that was 10,000 feet away, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth raised slightly. His smile gradually widened. In the end, he could not help but laugh out loud. The speed of his flying sword was at least several times faster than before. If he were to face Heartless now, he was completely confident that he could kill the other party in an instant, even if the other party was on guard. Invincible! Yi Xian laughed out loud. At this time, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, I dare to swear on master's head that you will definitely not be handsome for more than 3 seconds." Yi Xian's smile froze. "Xiaota, you are not just ordinary arrogant. Do you really not put father in your eyes now?" Xiaota said in a deep voice, "I am still very respectful to master. Also, I was modified by Sister Tianming." Yi Xian shook his head. "Damn it, this Xiaota will be beaten into a pulp by father sooner or later." Even he didn't dare use the qing or to pressure his father, yet this small pagoda wanted to use the qing or to pressure his father every single day. It was really walking further and further down the path of courting death. Without entangling with this Xiaota, Yi Xian left Xiaota and walked down the mountain. At this time, Elder Xian looked at Yi Xian. "You concealed your aura?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Elder Xian looked at Yi Xian. "The middle-aged man leading below is Thoughtless Realm. Do you know Thoughtless Realm?" Yi Xian laughed. "Ant." After saying that, he walked down the mountain with large strides, walking with invincible steps. Elder Xian. Very quickly, Yi Xian arrived at the foot of the mountain. He looked at Elder Gu in front of him and wanted to attack immediately, but he realized that Elder Gu was staring at him. Not only that, but there was also a terrifying force guarding in front of him. It was not the power of space-time. Yi Xian's face darkened when he saw this. Damn it! This guy was actually so guarded against him. Right at this moment, Elder Gu suddenly said, "Yi Xian, we want to see the person behind you?" Yi Xian subconsciously asked, "Which one?" Elder Gu looked at Yi Xian. "How many people are behind you?" Yi Xian said, "3. My big brother, my father, and my sister." Elder Gu glared at Yi Xian. "We want to see your sister, the woman who forged that sword for you." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "Your request reminds me of someone." Elder Gu frowned. "Who is it?" Chapter 1967. Needless to say, Yi Xian was a little surprised. Actively looking for Qing'er? That was a request. How unexpected. Elder Gu asked again, "We want to see the person behind you. Is that okay?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "What do you want to do?" Elder Gu laughed. "What do we want to do? Are you afraid that we'll harm the person behind you? Don't worry, we won't harm the person behind you. We just want to talk to her, that's all." Yi Xian did not speak, but his expression was a little nervous. Although it was only for a moment, Elder Gu and the rest caught it. Panic. Elder Gu smirked. "Yi Xian, don't worry. I promise you again that we won't harm the person behind you. Of course, that's if you cooperate." Yi Xian turned to look at the spiritual mountain. Elder Gu suddenly said, "Escape back to the spiritual mountain?" Yi Xian, think about it. Will the spiritual mountain really become the Enforcer sect's enemy because of you? Moreover, you can escape now, but can you escape forever? Yi Xian looked at Elder Gu. "If I hand over the sword, will you really let me go?" Elder Gu looked at Yi Xian. "Yes." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Swear." Elder Gu thought for a moment, then said, "I swear. As long as you hand over the sword, the Enforcer sect will not trouble you. If I disobey, let my soul be destroyed." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression relaxed. He hesitated for a moment, then opened his palm and the azure profound sword slowly flew to Elder Gu. A glint of excitement flashed in Elder Gu's eyes. He grabbed the green profound sword and slowly closed his eyes. Gradually, the space-time around him disappeared without a trace. Obviously, Yi Xian had authorized him to use it. A moment later, Elder Gu said excitedly, "A divine sword. It's really a divine sword." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Can I go now?" Elder Gu looked at Yi Xian. "Go? Where are we going?" Yi Xian stared at Elder Gu and said, "You said that if I hand over the sword, your law enforcement sect will no longer target me." Elder Gu smiled and said, "Who said we're targeting you? We just want to invite you to the law enforcement sect as a guest." Yi Xian's expression became somewhat ferocious. "You actually went back on your word." Elder Gu laughed heartily. "Yi Xian, you're going to make me laugh to death. I thought you were an outstanding person, but I never expected you to be so stupid. Gu Yi's death was too unjust." Yi Xian clenched his fists like an angry bull. "The people behind me will not let you go." Elder Gu looked at the green profound sword in his hand and smiled. "Are you talking about that woman?" Yi Xian nodded. Elder Gu smiled and said, "Come, let me see who this woman behind you is." As he spoke, he held the azure profound sword in his hand and started to sense it. Yi Xian stared at Elder Gu and said, "She will kill you." Elder Gu smiled disdainfully. "Kill me? What a joke. Do you know what state I am in? I'm at the thoughtless state. Chi." At this moment, a sword light descended from the sky. Boom. Elder Gu's voice stopped abruptly. Elder Gu's expression froze. The few elders behind him were shocked as if they had been petrified. On the spiritual mountain, Elder Xian suddenly looked up into the depths of the starry sky, but he saw nothing. Gradually, his expression became solemn. Yi Xian walked in front of Elder Gu and tilted his ear. "What did you just say? Thoughtless state? Holy shit, is the thoughtless state so weak? Can't even take one sword?" Elder Gu, Yi Xian blinked. "Your thoughtless realm isn't fake, is it?" Elder Gu gently pulled out the storage ring on Elder Gu's finger and said, "Elder Gu Yi, did he die unjustly?" Elder Gu stared at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly slashed with the azure profound sword. Elder Gu's soul was directly absorbed by the azure profound sword. In the distance, the few elders of the enforcement sect were about to run. At this moment, Yi Xian moved his mind. The azure profound sword pierced through the battlefield and the two elders' heads slowly fell to the ground. Clean and neat. Yi Xian took the two elders' storage rings and turned to walk to the spiritual mountain. Elder Xian looked at Yi Xian. "You've become stronger again." Yi Xian smiled. "Give me 10 years and I'll be invincible." Elder Xian, Yi Xian walked into a straw hut and looked at the 3 storage rings in his hand. There were 3 god veins in the storage rings. During this period of time, he had already learned that the main currency in this Dao boundary realm was actually the divine supreme crystal. This was because it was very useful to the experts of the heartless state and above. The saint veins were not very useful to the heartless state. This was also why the people of this Dao boundary realm did not plunder the resources of the lower worlds. There were close to 100,000 divine supreme crystals in the storage rings. Yi Xian put away the storage ring, got up and walked out. He glanced at the foot of the mountain. There was no one from the law enforcement sect there. At this moment, Elder Xian suddenly said, "Are you leaving?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Elder Xian looked at Yi Xian. "Have you decided where to go?" Yi Xian shook his head. This was his first time coming to this Dao boundary realm. He was still unfamiliar with this place. Elder Xian looked at Yi Xian. "Shall I recommend a place for you?" Yi Xian shook his head. "There's no need." After saying that, he stood up and took out a storage ring and placed it in front of Elder Xian. "Elder Xian, there are 50,000 divine supreme crystals in this storage ring. Thank you for your protection during this period of time. I will remember this favor." After saying that, he turned around and walked down the mountain. He had killed several people from the enforcement sect. This was a blood feud. If he continued to stay here, he would only implicate the spiritual mountain. Although the enforcement sect was not afraid of the enforcement sect, it did not mean that they would become enemies with the enforcement sect for him, Yi Xian. Elder Xian looked at Yi Xian, who was walking down the mountain without saying a word. Yi Xian looked around when he had left the spirit mountain. Then he suddenly disappeared from where he was. Not long after Yi Xian left, a woman suddenly appeared at the foot of the spiritual mountain. The woman was wearing a grass skirt and her long hair was scattered behind her back. In her right hand, she was holding a bamboo umbrella. After the woman walked up the mountain, Elder Xian quickly stood up and bowed, "Mountain Master." The woman turned around and looked at the horizon. The aura of an expert. Elder Xian bowed again and told her what had happened. After a moment of silence, the woman nodded, "Got it." After saying that, she walked towards the straw hut. Elder Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, "Mountain Master, the sword in that young man's hand is extraordinary." The woman did not even turn her head. "It has nothing to do with us." After saying that, she walked into the straw hut and closed the door. Outside the door, Elder Xian smiled bitterly. At this moment, the door suddenly opened and the woman appeared in front of Elder Xian. "It can ignore time and space?" Elder Xian nodded. After a moment of silence, the woman walked down the mountain. After leaving the spiritual mountain, Yi Xian did not go anywhere else. Instead, he went straight to the enforcement sect. He knew very well that after he left the spiritual mountain, the enforcement sect would definitely not let him go and he would not be able to escape. After all, he was unfamiliar with this place. Where could he escape to? Therefore, he chose to take the initiative to find the enforcement sect. "Don't you want to kill me? I'll take the initiative. Let's do it." Yi Xian flew on his sword and it did not take long for him to arrive at the enforcement sect. The enforcement sect was located in a mountain range surrounded by mountains. The enforcement sect was built on one of the tallest mountains. Looking from below, the mountain towered into the clouds and the top could not be seen at all. When Yi Xian arrived at the foot of the mountain, he looked up and smiled. "Enforcement sect, don't you want to kill me? I'm here now. Why isn't anyone here?" At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man wore a black robe and his hands were behind his back. His face was as expressionless as a dead man's. Yi Xian looked at the old man and smiled. "Tell your sect master to come out." The black-robed old man said, "I am." Hearing that, Yi Xian was stunned. The sect master came out just like that? The black-robed old man looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "Doesn't the enforcement sect want to kill me? Come on. I'm here, come on." The black-robed old man still did not speak. Yi Xian frowned slightly, and it seemed like something was off. As if he'd noticed something, he suddenly turned around and saw a woman sitting on a rock not too far away from him. The woman wore a grass skirt and held a bamboo umbrella in her hand. "Who is she?" Yi Xian was slightly stunned. Meanwhile, the black-robed old man suddenly said, "Welcome, Mountain Chieftain. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." Mountain Chieftain. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He knew who this woman was. The Spirit Mountain's Mountain Chieftain, Yan Bianshan. Yan Bianshan suddenly stood up and walked over to Yi Xian. "Come with me." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Why don't we annihilate the enforcement sect before leaving?" The black-robed old man frowned. He looked at Yi Xian, and the calm in his eyes had turned icy cold. Yan Bianshan stopped and turned around to look at Yi Xian. "You annihilate them, I'll watch." As she spoke, she walked to the side and sat down, and she just looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression froze. Yan Bianshan looked at Yi Xian. "Annihilate. A watch." Yi Xian was speechless. At the side, the black-robed old man was looking at Yi Xian as well. He was afraid of Yan Bianshan, but the enforcement sect wasn't afraid of her. After all, Yan Bianshan was only one person. Of course, he didn't want to provoke this woman because she was one of the 3 strongest experts in the Dao Edge realm. The most important thing was that she was really alone. This kind of person was the most terrifying because she didn't have any burdens. If she could win, she would fight. If she couldn't, she would run. The enforcement sect couldn't trample Spirited Mountain, right? Even if they could, they wouldn't dare. After all, who was the ancestor of Spirited Mountain? That was Dao Ling, an extraordinary expert. Most importantly, if Yan Bianshan could summon the ancestor. Right at this moment, Yan Bianshan suddenly said, "Annihilate." The black-robed old man looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi wants to annihilate my enforcement sect? You can do it. Come. My entire sect is waiting. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, Sect Master, I have a green profound sword here. Do you want to take a look? As he spoke, he passed the green profound sword to the black-robed old man. It's very fun, take a look. The black-robed old man was speechless. P.S. Asking for votes. I ask every day in hopes that someone will vote. Chapter 1968. The black-robed elder looked at Yi Xian in front of him. He really wanted to slap this flashy guy to death. However, he couldn't figure out Yan Bianshan's attitude. If he made a move and this woman protected him, then things would become complicated. To fight or not to fight? If he fought, the law enforcement sect really didn't want to provoke this woman. If he didn't fight, it would be embarrassing. At that time, the law enforcement sect would be in a dilemma. The black-robed elder had a headache. At this moment, Yi Xian put away the Qingxian sword. He turned around and walked to Yan Bianshan. He smiled and said, Let's go. He naturally knew that the reason why the other party didn't make a move was because of Yan Bianshan. He had to stop while he was ahead. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing later. He had to know when to stop acting tough. Yan Bianshan glanced at Yi Xian, stood up, and left. At this moment, the black-robed elder suddenly said, Young Master Yi. Yi Xian turned around and looked at the black-robed elder. The black-robed elder looked straight at Yi Xian. This matter isn't over yet. Yi Xian smiled. If you're not satisfied, then come and destroy my spiritual mountain. My spiritual mountain is waiting for you. The black-robed elder was speechless. Yan Bianshan glanced at Yi Xian again. Her expression was a little unfriendly. However, she didn't say much. Moments later, the two disappeared into the horizon. The black-robed elder looked at Yi Xian in the distance. His expression was calm. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, he suddenly disappeared. At the end of the horizon, Yan Bianshan suddenly stopped. She looked at Yi Xian and opened her palm. Sword. Yi Xian glanced at Yan Bianshan. Then, he handed the Qingxian sword to her. Yan Bianshan looked at the Qingxian sword in her hand. Moments later, she handed the sword back to Yi Xian. Follow me to a place. Yi Xian hesitated and asked, Where is it? Yan Bianshan did not speak. He took him and disappeared from where they stood. Yi Xian only felt his vision blur as countless white lights flashed in front of him. Soon, he suddenly felt his feet land on the ground, and his head felt as heavy as lead. Yi Xian shook his head with all his might. Then, he looked at Yan Bianshan beside him, his heart filled with shock. This woman's strength was terrifying. Yan Bianshan gazed into the distance with a hint of confusion in his eyes. Yi Xian turned around and looked into the distance. At this moment, he and Yan Bianshan were in front of a cliff. On the opposite side of the cliff was a mountain, and in the belly of the mountain, there was a stone door. Yi Xian was a little curious. This is... Yan Bianshan turned around and looked at Yi Xian. Lend me your sword. Yi Xian, on the other hand, did not refuse. He handed the green profound sword to Yan Bianshan. Yan Bianshan held the green profound sword and looked into the distance. In the next moment, she took a step forward. With this step, she had already arrived in front of the stone door. However, behind her, the space-time rippled like water. Yi Xian hurriedly followed. However, when he was about to approach the stone door, a strange space-time suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian was shocked. He quickly displayed the mysterious space-time. The mysterious space-time directly suppressed the strange space-time. Up until now, there was no space-time that could compare to the mysterious space-time that Qing left for him. Yi Xian safely walked to the front of the stone door. At this moment, Yan Bianshan kept staring at him. Yi Xian touched his face. He was a little confused. What's wrong? Yan Bianshan looked at Yi Xian and frowned slightly. You can come over? Yi Xian smiled. Why can't I come over? Yan Bianshan looked at Yi Xian for a long time and said, Nothing. With that, she walked to the front of the stone door. At this moment, the stone door suddenly trembled. Then, it directly turned into a strange whirlpool. Yan Bianshan turned to look at Yi Xian and asked, "This sword, it ignores any space-time?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "What are you trying to do?" Yan Bianshan pointed at the door. "This door is formed by a special space-time. The space-time inside has a strong crushing power. If an outsider enters it, not only will his physical body be crushed instantly, but even his soul will be turned into dust in an instant." Yi Xian was stunned. "Even you can't stop it?" Yan Bianshan shook her head. "I can't." Yi Xian was puzzled. "But as far as I know, you should be able to surpass space-time, right?" Yan Bianshan said, "That depends on who set up the space-time." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "This stone door was left by your master?" Yan Bianshan nodded. "Dao Ling." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression became serious. He was no stranger to Dao Ling. She was a legendary figure like Jun Daolin. Could it be that Dao Ling was behind this stone door? At this moment, Yan Bianshan asked again, "Can this sword really ignore any space-time?" Yi Xian nodded. "It can." He had confidence in Qing. Yan Bianshan nodded slightly. In the next moment, she held the sword and stabbed forward. The Xian profound sword stabbed into the space-time whirlpool. Boom! The space-time whirlpool violently trembled. Gradually, the space-time whirlpool became illusory and transparent. Seeing this, Yan Bianshan's expression changed subtly. This sword really can ignore space-time. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but look at Yi Xian. At this moment, she was a little curious about Yi Xian's background. At this moment, the space-time whirlpool suddenly disappeared. A stone path appeared in front of the two. Yan Bianshan hurriedly returned the sword to Yi Xian, and then she walked towards the stone path. Yi Xian put away the Xian profound sword and hurriedly followed her. The two of them walked down the stone path, and it wasn't long before they arrived at a cave. The cave was very large, and its surroundings were inlaid with glistening jade stones. Thus, the view inside the cave was very good. Moreover, there was a faint fragrance coming from within the cave. At this moment, Yan Bianshan suddenly stopped. She looked into the distance, and there was a coffin there. Yan Bianshan was slightly stunned when she saw the coffin. Her right hand started to tremble. Moreover, her face was slightly pale. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned slightly. Did Dao Ling die? At this moment, the coffin suddenly disappeared, and a woman appeared in front of Yan Bianshan and Yi Xian. The woman wore a white dress, and her long hair was tied into braids. She looked quite playful. Yan Bianshan was slightly stunned when she saw the woman, and then she bowed respectfully and said with a trembling voice, "Master, Master." Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he heard this. That's the super monstrous genius, Dao Ling. However, he noticed that the woman before him wasn't her main body. Dao Ling looked at Yan Bianshan and smiled playfully. "Little Bianshan, did you think that Master had died the moment you saw the coffin?" Yan Bianshan looked at Dao Ling with an extremely firm expression. "No one can kill Master." Dao Ling roared with laughter, and then she said, "Little Bianshan, you surprised me. Because logically speaking, you should have reached the half-step inactive realm in order to open the spatial door I set up. But you're still at the Daoist realm." Yan Bianshan turned to look at Yi Xian. It's the sword in his hand. Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian with a spurious smile. Yi Xian hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Greetings, big sister." Yan Bianshan was speechless. "Big sister?" Dao Ling blinked, and her smile was slightly strange. "You called me big sister?" Yi Xian hurriedly said, "To tell you the truth, I stayed at Spirited Mountain for a period of time, and I've admired Senior for a long time. Seeing Senior today, I was so excited that I spoke without thinking. Please forgive me, Senior." Dao Ling shook her head and smiled brilliantly. "What a showy little fellow, your glib tongue is really good." As she spoke, she opened her palm, and the Xian profound sword in Yi Xian's hand flew into her hand. Looking at the Xian profound sword, the smile on Dao Ling's face gradually vanished, and a rare trace of seriousness appeared in her eyes. After a long time, Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian. "Who forged this sword?" Yi Xian said, "My sister." Dao Ling frowned slightly. Your sister? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Dao Ling was silent for a moment, and then she smiled. You said you admire me? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Yes. I admire you, senior. Dao Ling laughed. Didn't you call me sister just now? All right, I'll acknowledge you as my younger brother. Yi Xian's expression froze. Yan Bianshan. Dao Ling blinked. Why, you're not willing? Yi Xian hurriedly said, I'm willing. Very willing. Hello, sister. Dao Ling laughed, and she sized up Yi Xian's cyan profound sword, and then she smiled. Little fellow, do you know what this sword contains? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, The way of space-time. Dao Ling shook her head. Only one of them. Yi Xian frowned slightly. There's something else? Dao Ling nodded. There's another unknown mysterious power, but it's sealed. However, if this sword is upgraded again, this power will be unsealed. Of course, with your current strength, I'm afraid it's difficult for you to control this power. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, It's fine. Anyway, I never rely on external objects. I don't use this sword often either. Little soul, Dao Ling laughed. Little fellow, you're really interesting. Your personality suits me very well. With that, she opened her palm, and the cyan profound sword flew back to Yi Xian. Yi Xian put away the cyan profound sword, and he hesitated, and then said, Sister, can I ask you a question? Dao Ling smiled slightly. You want to ask me, between me and the person who created this sword, who's stronger and who's weaker, right? Yi Xian nodded. Dao Ling smiled. A sword she casually created can break the space-time I set up. What do you think? Yi Xian wanted to say something, but he stopped. In fact, what he wanted to ask the most was whether Dao Ling could sense Qing Er's true strength. After he came to this Dao boundary, he felt that this world might be close to Qing Er and his father, because Qing Er and his father didn't have a realm at the time. And this Dao boundary's inaction realm was very similar to the no realm that Qing Er and his father said. However, he still didn't ask because it was too abrupt. One must have a sense of propriety when speaking and acting. At this moment, Yan Bianshan suddenly asked, Master, where did you go? Dao Ling's gaze shifted from Yi Xian to Yan Bianshan, and she smiled. A fun place. Yan Bianshan wanted to ask something, but Dao Ling shook her head. When you're strong enough, you'll naturally know. Right now, it's meaningless for you to know that. You only need to understand one thing, and that is to cultivate hard and reach the inaction realm. Yan Bianshan nodded slightly and didn't ask anything else. At this moment, Dao Ling opened her palm, and a storage ring slowly floated in front of Yan Bianshan. The things in this ring are helpful to you. If you're lucky enough, you might be able to reach the inaction realm. As she spoke, she sized up Yan Bianshan and smiled. Your foundation is very solid. It won't be difficult to reach the inaction realm. Inaction realm. Yan Bianshan's pupils suddenly constricted. This? Master has already reached the inaction realm? Yi Xian was also shocked. After all, this Dao Ling had always been rumored to have reached the inaction realm, but no one knew if she had really reached the inaction realm, but now it seemed that she had clearly reached the inaction realm. Dao Ling's lips curled up. Do you know why I left back then? After a moment of silence, Yan Bianshan said with a trembling voice, When Master left back then, you had already reached the inaction realm. Dao Ling nodded and smiled. Yes. When you reach the inaction realm, it'll be a little boring at first, because the people around you are like ants to you. The difference between those below and those in the inaction realm is too great. How great is it? It's like the sky and the earth. When you reach the inaction realm back then, you'll find that everything around you is meaningless, because you're an invincible existence. Of course, don't worry, this boring feeling will disappear soon, because you'll discover a new world. Yi Xian was a little curious. What new world? Dao Ling smiled. Humans are like a small cell in our body. Do you understand what I mean? *CK. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly jumped up. She actually knows this. Yi Xian frowned slightly, and said in his heart, How do you know? Xiaota said in a low voice, This woman at least knows the organization structure of life. At this moment, Dao Ling smiled. This Xiao Ta in your body is interesting. Yi Xian was shocked. Senior can hear what it says? Dao Ling smiled faintly. What do you think? Yi Xian. Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian and smiled. All living beings are insignificant. In this endless universe, humans are like a small cell in the body. In fact, they're even smaller. Just like the Tao critical point, it's not small, but in the entire universe, it's as small as a speck of dust. The universe has no end, and the great Tao has no end. The so-called surpassing the great Tao, surpassing destiny, are actually all illusory. Yi Xian said in a low voice, in that case, it's endless. Dao Ling smiled. You can say that because no one knows the end of the universe. Yi Xian was silent. Did Qing, and the others know the end of the universe? Obviously, they didn't. If they knew, the three of them wouldn't continue forward. At this moment, Dao Ling suddenly smiled. All right, it's basically over. Now, I'm going to meet this sister of yours. Yi Xian looked at Dao Ling, stunned. Meet Qing? Dao Ling smiled. Yes. Could it be that he had encountered such a mysterious super expert? How could he not meet him? When I come back, I'll give you another gift. Yi Xian said subconsciously, you should give it first. Dao Ling. Chapter 1969. After saying that, Yi Xian regretted it. That was a little disrespectful. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Dao Ling was slightly startled, and then she laughed. Sure, I'll give it to you first. With that, she pointed with her finger, and a white light entered between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! Yi Xian's body trembled violently, and countless information surged into his mind. At this moment, Dao Ling smiled and said, one is my inheritance, and it can help you cultivate more smoothly. The other is my understanding of your sword. You can use this sword according to the method I gave you, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. With that, she slowly floated up. At the side, Yan Bianshan bowed slightly and said seriously, Master, I will look for you. Dao Ling smiled and then looked at Yi Xian. Little guy, can you do me a favor? Yi Xian looked at Dao Ling. What favor? Dao Ling said, Bianshan received my insights and should be able to reach the inaction state. But during this process, she needs someone to protect her. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, there shouldn't be anyone who is an enemy of spiritual mountain, right? Dao Ling smiled. Are you not willing? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. It's not that I'm unwilling, but I feel that if someone dares to attack Miss Bianshan with my strength, Dao Ling smiled. Just do your best. If you really can't beat them, you can leave. Is that okay? Yi Xian thought for a moment and then nodded. But I'll do my best. Dao Ling's lips curled up. Little guy, take care. And you, Bianshan, I look forward to you reaching the inaction state. With that, she suddenly disappeared, and when she reappeared, she was already deep in an endless starry sky. In the depths of the starry sky, Dao Ling looked up. Her gaze pierced through countless starfields, and the corners of her lips curled up. Let me see who you are. Finally, she saw a plain dress, and at this moment, a sword light suddenly entered between her eyebrows. In the cave, Yan Bianshan said in a low voice, Master went to find your sister? Yi Xian nodded. Probably. Yan Bianshan said softly, what do you think Master's chances are? Yi Xian was speechless. Yan Bianshan looked at Yi Xian. Why aren't you saying anything? Yi Xian was a little helpless. Let's go. With that, he turned and left. They were all on the same side, so there was no need to act. Seeing Yi Xian leave, Yan Bianshan frowned slightly. However, she did not say much and left with him. Not long after the two of them left the cave, a black-robed old man appeared on the scene. The person who had arrived was the sect leader of the enforcement sect, Xiao Xiao. It was the Xiao Xiao Xiao. Xiao, the sect. The person who came was the world lord Zong Shou of the Cloud World, another superpower in Daoji Kingdom. Zong Shou looked at Xiao Xiao and smiled. Sect Master Xiao, I didn't expect you to be paying attention to this place. Xiao Xiao said, How can I not pay attention to the last place Senior Dao Ling appeared? Moreover, this mountain lord would come here every once in a while. I just didn't expect her to actually enter this time. Zhong Shou smiled. As far as I know, the sword in that young man's hand can ignore any space-time. It can even ignore the space-time left by Senior Dao Ling. This sword is not simple. Xiao Xiao looked calm. No one knew what she was thinking. At this moment, Zhong Shou changed the topic. Sect Master Xiao, as far as I know, this person killed several elders of your sect. Xiao Xiao was expressionless. If the Mountain Lord gets Dao Ling's inheritance, Zhong Shou smiled. So what? Dao Ling hasn't reached the inaction realm anyway. Xiao Xiao looked at Zhong Shou. Do you believe that? Zhong Shou was silent. In fact, they all thought that Dao Ling had reached the inaction realm. Why did Jun Daolin suddenly disappear? According to the successor of Jun Daolin, the reason why Jun Daolin left was because he felt that he had no opponents in the world after reaching the inaction realm. Why did Dao Ling leave? Obviously, she had reached the inaction realm. Xiao Xiao said, in other words, Mountain Lord Yen has the inheritance of an inaction realm expert. Hearing this, Zhong Shou smiled. Sect Master Xiao, your idea is very dangerous. Xiao Xiao looked at Zhong Shou. With our talent and potential, can we reach the inaction realm in this life? Zhong Shou was silent for a moment. Difficult. 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 3 difficult. Xiao Xiao nodded. Strictly speaking, there's basically no chance. But what if we get the inheritance of Senior Dao Ling? Will we have a chance? Zhong Shou narrowed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Xiao Xiao continued, this is our only chance. Zhong Shou smiled. Then how do you think we should cooperate? Xiao Xiao said softly, when she reaches the inaction realm, we will make our move. Zhong Shou said in a low voice, what if Dao Ling? Xiao Xiao was silent for a moment. A ruthless look flashed in her eyes. I bet she won't appear. Zhong Shou asked again. The young man? He's an uncertain factor. Xiao Xiao's eyes flashed coldly. Kill him first. Zhong Shou asked again. Do we need to contact Jun Daolin? Xiao Xiao shook her head. No need. That Nakayama of Silla has always been prudent in defending the city. He won't do such a risky thing. Zhong Shou said softly, that's true. Spiritual Mountain. After Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan returned to Spiritual Mountain, Yan Bianshan walked to his straw hut. Yi Xian suddenly said, are you going to reach the inaction realm? Yan Bianshan nodded. Yi Xian sighed. Mountain Lord Yan, are you going to reach the inaction realm just like that? Yan Bianshan turned to look at Yi Xian. Is there a problem? Yi Xian said in a low voice. Mountain Lord Yan, have you ever thought about what if someone ambushes you when you are trying to reach the inaction realm? Yan Bianshan frowned. Yi Xian was relieved. Fortunately, this woman didn't say something stupid like, how is it possible? Otherwise, he would have turned around and left. Although he promised Dao Ling that he would protect this woman, it didn't mean that he would do it brainlessly. If he was not fully prepared and stayed here to help this woman, would he be able to leave if someone attacked? Yan Bianshan looked at Yi Xian. Do you have any suggestions? Yi Xian looked around. Yan Bianshan suddenly said, there are no outsiders within 1,000,000 miles. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Do you have any friends? The stronger ones. Yan Bianshan pointed at Elder Xian who was not far away. Yi Xian asked, anything else? Yan Bianshan shook his head. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. He was a loner. Yi Xian asked again, do the law enforcement sect, Yun Jie, and Jun Daogua know about the mystic realm? Yan Bianshan nodded. Yi Xian said in a low voice, if I'm not wrong, they already know that you and I entered the mystic realm. In other words, they will definitely guess if we obtained Dao Ling's inheritance. Do you think they can resist the temptation of Senior Dao Ling's inheritance? Yan Bianshan shook his head. Yi Xian nodded. In other words, they might join forces to snatch it. Hearing that, Yan Bianshan frowned. At this moment, Elder Xian said in a low voice, young Master Yi is right. The law enforcement sect, Yun Jie, and Daogua definitely won't just sit by and watch you reach the inaction realm. Yan Bianshan looked at Yi Xian. Do you have any ideas? Yi Xian thought about it and shook his head. There's no way because you don't have any friends. You're all alone. Speaking up to this point, he paused and said, Can you summon your ancestor? Yan Bianshan shook his head. Yi Xian was in complete despair. Damn it. Others can summon their ancestor, so why can't you? Yan Bianshan said, Master said that you have to protect me. Yi Xian's face darkened. Do you think I can defeat so many of them? Yan Bianshan said, I believe you. Yi Xian was stunned. You believe me? Yan Bianshan nodded. I believe Master, and Master believes you. So, I believe you. Yi Xian was speechless. Yan Bianshan continued. I have to charge into the inaction realm because even if I don't, they will still attack us. Am I right? Yi Xian nodded. Yan Bianshan said, Once I reach the inaction realm, they are all ants. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Can you reach the inaction realm in 2 hours? Yan Bianshan shook his head. At least 3 million years. 3 million years. Yi Xian sighed. By the time you reach the inaction realm, the grass on my and Elder Xian's graves will be dozens of feet tall. Yan Bianshan just looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian was silent. Yan Bianshan suddenly said, Do you want to escape? Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. How did this woman know what he was thinking? Yan Bianshan said, If you want to leave, then leave. You don't owe me anything. With that, she turned and walked towards the thatched hut. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, I have an idea. Yan Bianshan turned and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I will take you and escape. Yan Bianshan frowned. What do you mean? Yi Xian disappeared with Yan Bianshan. When they appeared again, the two were already inside the Xiaota. When they entered the Xiaota, Yan Bianshan was stunned. Gradually, her expression became serious. The time here and the time outside, Yi Xian looked at Yan Bianshan. You only need 1 month to cultivate here. 1 month, is that okay? Yan Bianshan nodded. But with that, she looked at Yi Xian. Can you block for me for 1 month? Yi Xian was silent for a moment and said, I will try my best. Actually, he knew that if he escaped alone, it would be even more dangerous. He and Yan Bianshan entered the secret realm together. Would they let him go? Definitely not. Especially the law enforcement sect. They might be thinking about how to deal with him. If Yan Bianshan reached the inaction realm, there would still be a chance of survival. Yi Xian left the Xiaota. He looked around and then looked at Elder Xian. Elder Xian, you stay here and guard for as long as you can. If you can't, don't defend to the death. Understand? Elder Xian nodded. Understood. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Then, he turned into a ray of sword light and soared into the sky. In the distant sky, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. Not far in front of him was Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, where are you going? Work hard to save. Chapter 1970. Looking at Xiao Xiao in front of him, Yi Xian smiled. I think you must be curious about whether we got the inheritance of Senior Dao Ling in that secret realm. Xiao Xiao nodded. I am. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Yen will reach the inaction realm soon. Xiao Xiao looked at Yi Xian. Don't worry, our men have arrived at Spiritual Mountain. They attacked. Yi Xian fell silent. Xiao Xiao suddenly walked slowly towards Yi Xian. Every time he took a step, the space would tremble slightly, and then ripples would appear. He was on guard. Although Yi Xian's cultivation was much lower than his, he was still on guard. People often died because of their carelessness. That was why Yi Xian didn't attack immediately. He could sense that Xiao Xiao was constantly on guard. It was impossible for him to catch him off guard. Yi Xian burst into laughter. Old man, come on. Take my invincible sword attack. As soon as he finished speaking, the green profound sword in his hand trembled violently, and a sharp and ear-piercing sword cry soared into the sky. Xiao Xiao narrowed his eyes and clenched his right hand. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and flew on his sword, vanishing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. He escaped? In an instant, Xiao Xiao was stunned. That guy actually escaped? Xiao Xiao quickly came back to his senses, and his expression was rather unsightly. He was actually playing with him. Xiao Xiao took a step forward and vanished on the spot. At the end of the horizon, Yi Xian flew through space on his sword. Since the azure sword could ignore space, he was extremely fast, so fast that even Xiao Xiao, who was at the Daoist realm, couldn't catch up to him in a short period of time. However, Xiao Xiao clearly didn't intend to give up, and he kept chasing after him. In the space and time, Yi Xian suddenly took out a voice transmission stone. "Sis, where are you?" A moment later, Yang Nianxue's voice sounded in his mind. "What are you doing?" Yi Xian hurriedly said, "I missed you." Yang Nianxue remained silent for a moment before she said, "Are you being pursued?" Yi Xian's face darkened. "Of course not. How could I be hunted down?" Yang Nianxue suddenly said, "I'm busy, let's talk another day." Yi Xian's expression froze. Damn it. She was his biological sister. Right at this moment, the space in front of him suddenly split apart, and then an enormous hand that could hold up the sky grabbed out. Yi Xian squinted his eyes and gently flicked the hilt with his thumb. The azure profound sword was unsheathed and slashed down. Boom. The enormous hand was directly slashed into nothingness, and then the space in the surroundings surged violently. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao appeared in front of Yi Xian. Xiao Xiao gazed at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and a sword suddenly appeared between Xiao Xiao's brows. However, it stopped when it was half an inch away from his brows because a mysterious force had obstructed the azure profound sword. The sword returned to Yi Xian's hand after it missed its target. Xiao Xiao didn't waste her breath, and she raised her hand and smashed her fist forward. With this punch, Yi Xian felt that everything in front of him had darkened. Space was obliterated. Yi Xian closed his eyes slowly, and then the azure profound sword in his hand suddenly flew over to him and transformed into a sword shield. Bang! The sword shield shook violently, and then the space in the surroundings was instantly transformed into ash like burning paper. However, Yi Xian and the sword shield were completely unharmed. The sword and shield had forcefully blocked all of Xiao Zhao's power. Seeing this scene, Xiao Zhao's expression darkened in the distance. Yi Xian opened his palm and the sword shield transformed into a sword that fell into his palm. He looked at the distant Xiao Xiao and said with a smile, "So, even the Daoist realm isn't that strong." After exchanging blows, he suddenly realized that the gap between him and the martial Dao realm wasn't that great. At this moment, Xiao Xiao opened his palm and flipped it lightly. In an instant, the space-time around Yi Xian began to reverse. At the same time, countless black divine lightning appeared above his head. These divine lightning emitted an extremely terrifying and powerful aura. However, Yi Xian was not afraid because these divine lightning were formed from the power of time and space. Xiao Xiao said softly, "Fall." Countless bolts of divine lightning fell. Yi Xian did not dodge. He slowly closed his eyes and stabbed upwards with his sword. Countless bolts of divine lightning instantly drowned him, but not long after, all the divine lightning disappeared, because they had all been absorbed by the cyan profound sword. Seeing this scene, Xiao Zhao's expression suddenly turned ugly. What the hell? He could even absorb this? Yi Xian greedily took a deep breath. He realized that he could use the cyan profound sword to absorb the divine lightning. To him, absorbing the divine lightning was a great supplement. If he did it a few more times, he might be able to reach the Heartless Realm. In the distance, Xiao Xiao said in a deep voice, "What kind of monster are you?" It had to be said that Yi Xian had shocked him. What he had used just now was the space-time divine lightning. This was an existence even more terrifying than the space-time abyss. As for this fellow, not only could he ignore the space-time divine lightning, he could even absorb it. This was too abnormal. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Xiao Xiao. Xiao Zhao's eyes narrowed as he punched out. On the other hand, Yi Xian actually didn't dodge at all. and he allowed the punch to smash onto his chest. When his fist came into contact with Yi Xian's chest, a strand of uneasiness instantly arose in Xiao Zhao's heart. But at this moment, it was utterly impossible for him to withdraw his fist, so he could only increase his strength. Bang! Yi Xian was blasted flying. On the other hand, Xiao Xiao had fallen directly into a space-time abyss. A mysterious space-time abyss. Xiao Zhao's brows knit together slightly. He slowly pressed his right hand forward, causing the space-time abyss before him to sink down. In the next moment, he suddenly charged forward. Bang! Xiao Xiao had forcefully charged out. However, Yi Xian had vanished at this moment. Xiao Zhao's expression became extremely unsightly when he witnessed this scene, and he suddenly turned his head around. Call the law enforcement guards over. He noticed that it was still slightly difficult for him to kill Yi Xian with his own strength. Yi Xian definitely wouldn't be able to defeat him, but the problem was that this fellow didn't want to fight him to the death. Spiritual Mountain. On this day, a person suddenly appeared at the foot of the spiritual mountain. It was Yunjie's realm lord, Zhong Shou. After Zhong Shou walked up the spiritual mountain, Elder Xian appeared in front of him. Zhong Shou glanced at the straw hut in the distance, and then he smiled. Elder Xian, I want to meet Mountain Lord Yan. Elder Xian stared straight at Zhong Shou. Scram! Zhong Shou laughed heartily. Rumor has it that Elder Xian is the third strongest in the Daoist realm. I want to see for myself. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. In an instant, the entire heavens and earth boiled. A vicious look flashed across Elder Xian's eyes. He took a step forward, and in the next moment, the two of them entered an unknown and mysterious space-time. The two of them didn't dare to fight here because there was a powerful restrictive spell here. It was a spell that Jun Daolin had left behind in the past. If someone broke the boundary of the space-time, it would be a destructive or large-scale attack. The restrictive spell that Jun Daolin had left behind would appear. It wasn't something that a Daoist realm expert could resist. Therefore, basically no one dared to destroy the boundary of the Dao realm in recent years. While Elder Xian and Zhong Shou were fighting, a dozen mysterious experts suddenly appeared in front of the straw hut. One of them waved his sleeve, and the straw hut turned into nothingness. There wasn't a single person in the straw hut. The leading expert frowned slightly, and he turned to look at the surroundings. He waved his sleeve again, and the surrounding straw huts all disappeared. But Yan Bianshan was still nowhere to be seen. The leading expert's face turned cold, and he turned to look. Realm Lord, that Yan Bianshan isn't here. Hearing this, the space-time nearby suddenly turned into a vortex, and in the next moment, Zhong Shou walked out. He glanced at the spiritual mountain and very quickly, his face turned cold. He looked at Elder Xian, who wasn't far away. Where is she? Elder Xian sneered. Do you think I'll tell you? Zhong Shou narrowed his eyes, and at this moment, dozens of powerful auras appeared around Elder Xian. There were more than 10 Daoist realm experts among them. The killing intent in Zhong Shou's eyes intensified. Kill! The surrounding experts were about to attack, and at this moment, Elder Xian suddenly said, I'll tell you. The Mountain Lord is in young Master Ye's body. Yi Xian. Zhong Shou frowned slightly. Yi Xian? Elder Xian nodded his head obediently. After a moment of silence, Zhong Shou said, Let's go. With that, he directly led everyone and disappeared from the scene. Elder Xian looked at the horizon and said softly, Little guy, you have to hold on. Yi Xian. Somewhere in the sky, Zhong Shou brought Yunjie and the other experts to meet up with the law enforcement sect. Xiao Xiao frowned slightly. She's in Yi Xian's body? Zhong Shou nodded. That woman is not on Spiritual Mountain at all. Xiao Xiao was silent. Zhong Shou said solemnly, That woman did not appear either, which means that she is very likely to break through to the inaction realm. Xiao Xiao said softly, Do you think she can reach the inaction realm in a short time? Zhong Shou shook his head. Impossible. She is not Dao Ling. Xiao Xiao said softly, I think she can. Zhong Shou looked at Xiao Xiao, stunned. Why? Xiao Xiao said solemnly, This Yi Xian is not simple. That sword in his hand not only can ignore any space-time, but it can also absorb space-time lightning. He paused, then said, when he first came to the Dao border, he was only at the life-body realm, but now he is at the primordial spirit realm, and he used less than half a month. Zhong Shou frowned slightly. You mean he has some divine item that can shorten the cultivation time? Xiao Xiao nodded. Hearing this, Zhong Shou's expression suddenly became ugly. Xiao Xiao said softly, we have already attacked Spiritual Mountain, which means we have no way out. If that Yan Bianshan reaches the inaction realm, even if she is half a step into the inaction realm, it will be a huge disaster for us. In other words, we do not have much time. Zhong Shou said solemnly, then Yi Xian. Xiao Xiao looked into the distance, a trace of worry flashing in her eyes. Kill that kid at all costs, or he will become a huge disaster in the future. Zhong Shou nodded. I will go contact those guys from the Hidden Killers Pavilion. Xiao Xiao frowned slightly. At this time, Zhong Shou said solemnly, they must already know. It is impossible for us to eat it alone. Xiao Xiao was silent for a moment, then nodded, go contact them. Zhong Shou turned and left. Chapter 1971. Daolin Nation. Daolin Nation's strength was actually at the bottom of the list. However, for so many years, no force had dared to target Daolin Nation. That was because Daolin Nation's royal family was the descendant of Jun Daolin. Although Jun Daolin was no longer in Daolin Nation, he was not dead. Who knew when he would return? Palace. After the morning assembly, Nakayama of Silla walked out. Behind Nakayama of Silla was Gucho. At this moment, Gucho was already in the thoughtless realm. Nakayama of Silla chuckled. Your brother is being hunted. Gucho frowned. By who? Nakayama of Silla said, the enforcement sect and Yunjia. Gucho said in a low voice, Brother Yi is in danger. Although he had not been in Daolin Nation for long, he was still familiar with it. Whether it was the enforcement sect or Yunjia, they were both top forces. Two sects hunting Yi Xian alone? Gucho suddenly said, this brother Yi is really born with hatred. Nakayama of Silla smiled. The treasures on him are too tempting. Gucho looked at Nakayama of Silla. Senior, do you want to get involved? Nakayama of Silla shook his head. My Daolin Nation is small and weak. If not for our ancestors, we would have been devoured by them long ago. So, it's better not to get involved in this kind of thing. Gucho nodded slightly and said nothing more. Nakayama of Silla smiled. Go and cultivate. It won't be long before you reach the thoughtless realm. Gucho nodded and turned to leave. Not long after Gucho left, a phantom suddenly appeared in front of Nakayama of Silla. The phantom lowered his head slightly and said something softly. A moment later, Nakayama of Silla smiled. Hidden Kill Pavilion is also targeting this young Master Yi? The phantom nodded. Yes. Their deputy pavilion master has personally taken action. Nakayama of Silla chuckled and said, pass down the order. Let the Dao Lin guards secretly pay attention to young Master Yi. If necessary, save him. The figure hesitated for a moment before he said, doing that might offend the Hidden Kill Pavilion, Yunjie, and the Enforcer sect. Nakayama of Silla looked at the shadow in front of him and said with a smile, as a person, one must have a breadth of mind and structure. What you see is a crisis, but what I see is a great opportunity. First, young Master Yi was no ordinary person, because the sword in his hand was definitely not something that ordinary people could create. At the very least, one had to be in the inaction realm to be able to create such a sword. In other words, young Master Yi definitely had at least one inaction realm expert behind him. Secondly, how many years has it been since the Spiritual Mountain accepted anyone? Since Senior Dao Ling accepted Mount Yanbianshan, the Spiritual Mountain hasn't accepted anyone else. But now, young Master Yi is together with Mountain Lord Yan. When he spoke up to hear, he grinned and continued. Mountain Lord Yan definitely obtained Senior Dao Ling's inheritance. However, everyone overlooked something, and that is that young Master Yi entered the secret realm with Mountain Lord Yan, and then they came out together. After they came out, Mountain Lord Yen went into closed-door cultivation, and this young Master Yi actually stood guard for Mountain Lord Yen. Do you know what this means? It means that young Master Yi has definitely joined the spiritual mountain, and he's met Senior Dao Ling. What kind of judgment does someone like Senior Dao Ling have? Can ordinary people catch her eye? And since she's able to acknowledge young Master Yi. As he spoke, he looked up into the sky and chuckled. If we help young Master Yi, not only will young Master Yi owe us a favor, but the spiritual mountain will owe us a favor as well. This is simply killing two birds with one stone. Perfect. The Phantom suddenly said, King, we can just sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Let them kill each other, and we'll take advantage of it in the end. Nakayama of Silla sighed softly. What you said is not wrong, but you've overlooked one point, and that is that I want to reach the boundless realm. The Phantom was stunned. Nakayama of Silla smiled. If we sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, once young Master Yi and the others win, do you think they'll give a damn about me? Who knows, that Mountain Lord Yen might even destroy us if he's unhappy. As he spoke, he slowly closed his eyes. In this battle, young Master Yi will definitely win. The Phantom was a little puzzled. Why? Nakayama of Silla smiled. Because he has someone backing him. Fighting with this kind of person, so what if you win against the young ones? Because the old ones will come out immediately, and even a few old ones will come out. Besides, don't you think that this young Master Yi's family elders deliberately sent him to the world to train? You can beat him, you can torture him, but you can't beat him to death. If you want to beat him to death, it's definitely the same as poking a hornet's nest. The Phantom was speechless. Nakayama of Silla smiled. You guys go first. I'll get ready. It's time for me to perform. Moreover, I'll have to put on a show for our young Master Yi, to make him feel that it's not easy for us to suddenly help him. We're helping him against a few super forces. Young Master Yi will definitely be touched. The Phantom's expression froze. He bowed slightly, then turned and left. Nakayama of Silla looked at the horizon, where a white cloud floated gently. After a while, Nakayama of Silla suddenly smiled, then walked into the distance. In the middle of a mountain range, Yi Xian stopped. At this moment, he had already used the Qingxian sword to conceal his aura. However, he didn't think that he could rest easy like this. Yi Xian looked around, then entered Xiao Ta's body. Yan Bianshan sat cross-legged on a mountain peak. His eyes were slightly closed, and there was no aura coming from his body. 300 years. Yi Xian felt a headache when he thought about this. Because he knew that Elder Xian of Spiritual Mountain wouldn't be able to hold on for long. In other words, before long, not only would he be chased by the law enforcement sect, but he would also be chased by Yunjia. Two super forces. Yi Xian felt like he was a jinx, being chased wherever he went. Yi Xian left the pagoda and was just about to leave. However, right at this moment, his pupils constricted abruptly, and the azure sword in his hand vanished. A cold light flashed across his throat. Yi Xian retreated thousands of feet. After stopping, Yi Xian squinted his eyes. There was no one in front of him. Moreover, there was a thin layer of armor around his throat. Armor formed by the Qingxian sword. Yi Xian squinted his eyes. The one who had attacked him was a Daoist realm assassin. Even a Daoist realm assassin had been mobilized. But what puzzled him was how the other party had found him. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Xiao Ta, can you sense that assassin? Xiao Ta was silent for a moment, then said, No. Yi Xian frowned slightly. You can't? Are you kidding? You are Destiny's Tower, and you can't even sense an assassin? Xiao Ta said calmly, Is there any cause and effect? Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta continued, Young master, you have to rely on yourself, understand? Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Xiao Ta continued, Young master, think about it. Master and Sister Tianming are waiting for you to grow up. But if you continue like this, I don't think they will get to see that day. You don't want to be a second generation for the rest of your life, do you? Yi Xian said calmly, Can't you sense that assassin? Xiao Ta said angrily, Are you looking down on me? Puma. I am Destiny's Tower? Yi Xian asked. Then where is the assassin? Xiaota was silent for a moment, then said, In the shadow behind you. Hearing this, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. He opened his palm, and an air sword suddenly slashed at his shadow. Almost instantly, a cold light slashed at the back of Yi Xian's neck. Boom! Yi Xian was sent flying thousands of feet away, and the surrounding forest was instantly turned to dust. When Yi Xian stopped, the assassin was gone. Yi Xian said in his heart, Xiaota, tell me his location. Xiaota said, 10 feet to the right in a tree. A sword light suddenly pierced that tree, and the moment the tree broke, an afterimage instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet away, then quietly disappeared. Xiaota continued, 300,000 feet away, in a pool. Yi Xian opened his palm. The armor on his body suddenly turned into a beam of sword light and slashed into the pool of water. Boom! An afterimage was slashed and retreated repeatedly, and in the place where it was, an arm was left. At this time, Xiaota said, the opponent ran away. Yi Xian looked coldly into the distance. He discovered that although the assassin was also in the Daoist realm, the opponent's strength in a head-on confrontation was a bit weak. However, this was normal. After all, the opponent was an assassin, and they focused on killing with one blow. But once they faced each other head-on, the opponent completely lost his advantage. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Xiaota, can you help me hide my aura? He had previously relied on the green profound sword to hide his aura, but he discovered that someone could still find him. Xiaota said, Of course. However, young master, I have to remind you that even if I help to hide your aura, the person just now might still be able to find you. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Why? Xiaota said in a deep voice, Little soul has already completely hidden your aura, but the opponent can still find you. This means that the opponent was able to find you, not because of your aura. Yi Xian was a little curious. Then what is it? Xiaota said, Young master, you have to remember, I'm just a tower. Why do you always ask a tower so many questions? Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Damn, once this guy encountered a question that he didn't know, he would remember that he was a tower. Yi Xian asked again, Xiaota, remember to notify me at any time once the opponent comes near. Xiaota hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Young master, don't you want to experience the excitement and pleasure of being between life and death? Think about it, being able to react in that extreme instant and kill the opponent. Isn't that very satisfying? Yi Xian fell silent. Xiaota continued, If I notify you, then it'll be very difficult for you to improve. But if you can rely on your own strength to kill the opponent, then it'll be completely different. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he said, What you said isn't without reason. Xiaota nodded, I want to experience the feeling of being pursued. Yi Xian smiled, It's not impossible. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Brother, stop hiding. I saw you a long time ago. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished. Not long after Yi Xian disappeared, a man in black suddenly appeared at the place where Yi Xian was originally standing. The man in black looked at Yi Xian, who disappeared in the distance, and said softly, What the hell? Is he trying to scare me? P.S. You gave me monthly tickets. When I become a god, I'll definitely repay you with 100 chapters. Chapter 1972. Yi Xian went straight to the law enforcement sect. To him, the most dangerous place was the safest place. He quietly snuck into the law enforcement sect. Currently, all the top experts in the law enforcement sect had left. There was not a single Daoist realm cultivator in the entire sect. He did not kill anyone from the law enforcement sect. There was no point in killing these small fries. On the contrary, he would expose himself. To him, every bit of time was precious. In the dark, Yi Xian scanned his surroundings. Finally, he came to a small building. This small building was rather remote and had been abandoned for a long time. There were cobwebs everywhere. Yi Xian came to the top floor and looked around. There were some moldy ancient books placed around him. They were all worthless books. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and entered Xiaota. He slowly closed his eyes. Cultivation. Dao Ling had given him an inheritance. Just as Dao Ling had said, with the help of this inheritance, he could indeed save a lot of time when cultivating. In that inheritance, Dao Ling had already explained this realm in great detail, even including her previous cultivation experiences. This was too much of a help to Yi Xian. Yi Xian began to charge towards the Heartless realm. His biggest shortcoming now was that his realm was too low. Once his realm caught up, it was not impossible for him to kill a Daoist realm cultivator. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. Outside the law enforcement sect, the assassin hiding in the dark was at a loss. He wanted to attack, but he was also a little afraid of Yi Xian because Yi Xian seemed to be able to know his location. And if he faced Yi Xian head-on, he would definitely not be able to kill Yi Xian. In a head-on battle, his strength would be greatly reduced. Most importantly, he did not dare to approach Yi Xian now. He had actually given up on killing Yi Xian because he knew that he could not kill him. What he needed to do now was to follow Yi Xian and know Yi Xian's whereabouts at any time. Yi Xian's concealment technique was also somewhat unique. If one didn't follow him from time to time, it would be very easy to lose him. However, he was slightly puzzled as to why this fellow had come to the law enforcement sect. Inside Xiaota, Heartless state. To put it simply, he was at ease. It was the same concept as his sword Dao. Of course, it sounded simple, but it was still difficult to reach this realm. If the heart was bound, it would be difficult to be free. What he wanted to achieve was to let his heart be free from any shackles. This process was very difficult, and it required the support of countless resources. Previously, when he was trying to break through to the life-knowing realm, he felt that it took too much energy. But compared to now, he felt that it was child's play. This was because he needed to consume at least 1,000,000 Supreme Saint crystals every day. If it were not for the resources of the King of Snow Mountain, Elder Gu, and the others, he would not have been able to break through to the Heartless realm. Apart from himself, he also gave Dao Ling's inheritance to Su Wang and let Su Wang break through to the Heartless state. He wanted to nurture a super expert. This was his disciple. He had to be careful. Just like that, 10 years passed. As he sat cross-legged on the ground, the aura around Yi Xian grew stronger and stronger. Outside, the black-robed assassin who was hiding in the shadows suddenly turned around, and a black-robed man had suddenly appeared before him. The black-robed man bowed slightly to the black-robed man. "Greetings, Pavilion Master." The black-robed man before him was the Pavilion Master of the Hidden Killer Pavilion. The Pavilion Master glanced at the law enforcement sect in the distance and said hoarsely, "He's inside." The black-robed man nodded, "He's inside." As he spoke, he hesitated for a moment and said, "There's something strange about him. Because he seems to be able to see me." The Pavilion Master fell silent for a moment before he said, "Leave this matter to me. You can leave. Remember, besides me, don't let anyone know of his whereabouts." The black-robed man bowed slightly and vanished silently. The Pavilion Master gazed into the distant pavilion, and then he vanished silently after a moment of silence. He didn't attack Yi Xian either. On the other side, Xiao Xiao and Zhong Shou's expressions were extremely unsightly somewhere high up in the clouds. Because they'd searched for an entire day and night yet hadn't found any information about Yi Xian. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly said, "Is there any news from the Hidden Killer Pavilion?" Xiao Xiao shook her head. "There's no reply from them." Zhong Shou frowned slightly when he heard this. "Even they aren't able to find him?" Xiao Xiao fell silent. Zhong Shou gazed at Xiao Xiao. "Is there a problem?" Xiao Xiao spoke indifferently. "Do you think the Hidden Killer Pavilion killed Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan in secret and seized the inheritance?" Zhong Shou's expression instantly became unsightly when he heard this. That wasn't impossible. At this moment, Xiao Xiao said, "No matter what, we can't place all our hopes on the Hidden Killer Pavilion. We have to think of another way to find Yi Xian." Zhong Shou looked at Xiao Xiao. "Do you have any good ideas?" After a moment of silence, Xiao Xiao said, "Where do you think Yi Xian is hiding now?" Zhong Shou frowned slightly. What do you mean? Xiao said softly, if I were Yi Xian, then the most dangerous place for me right now might be the safest place. Hearing this, Zhong Shou's pupils suddenly shrank. In reply to Yunjie, Xiao stopped Zhong Shou. Go to my enforcer sect. Zhong Shou was puzzled. Why? Xiao sneered. Because my enforcer sect has the deepest hatred for him. With that, he waved his hand. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he led the powerhouses of the enforcer sect and vanished on the spot. After Xiao and the others left, Nakayama of Silla appeared. He looked in the direction that Xiao and the others had left and frowned deeply. After a moment, Nakayama of Silla said, let the Daolin guards and the Imperial guards head to the enforcer sect at the fastest speed. With that, he vanished on the spot. At the enforcer sect, Yi Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes and was about to get up. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla's voice resounded in Yi Xian's mind. Young Master Yi, focus on your breakthrough. I'll block the enforcer sect and Yunjie for you. However, I can only block them for an hour. An hour had passed in the outside world. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, thank you, senior. Nakayama of Silla smiled. You're too kind. Yi Xian didn't have the time to think about why Nakayama of Silla would help him because he was at the critical moment of charging into the undistracted state. He needed some time. Within the enforcer sect, Xiao glanced at the surroundings, and then his gaze descended onto a pavilion in the surroundings. Found it. As soon as he finished speaking, he spread open his right hand, and then he suddenly grabbed at the pavilion. A powerful force swept down from the sky. Right when the force was about to strike the pavilion, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared before the pavilion, and then he smashed his fist forward. Bang! The entire expanse of space warped. Xiao and Zhong Shou's expressions turned unsightly when they saw the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was Nakayama of Silla from the Daolin Kingdom. Xiao gazed at Nakayama of Silla. Nakayama of Silla, we've always lived in harmony with the Daolin Kingdom. What's the meaning of this? Nakayama of Silla smiled. Sect leader Xiao, I'm protecting this young Master Yi. Xiao gazed at Nakayama of Silla, and then he smiled and said, I understand. Nakayama of Silla has chosen a different path from us. However, our objectives are the same. Nakayama of Silla smiled. Yes. Xiao turned to look at Zhong Shou. I'll hold him back. Zhong Shou nodded. All right. Xiao looked at Nakayama of Silla and was about to make a move. At this moment, Nakayama of Silla suddenly said, Sect leader Xiao, can you listen to me? Xiao was expressionless. What does Nakayama of Silla want to say? Nakayama of Silla smiled. Sect leader Xiao, aren't you afraid that Mountain Chieftain Yen will summon her ancestor? Xiao was expressionless. I bet that she can't summon her ancestor. Nakayama of Silla wanted to say something, but Xiao suddenly slammed his palm down, and a powerful force swept down from the sky. Nakayama of Silla narrowed his eyes, and then he disappeared on the spot. Bang! In the sky above the law enforcement sect, a powerful force suddenly spread out. In the next moment, Nakayama of Silla and Xiao both entered another spacetime. Neither of them dared to recklessly destroy this spacetime. The nomological laws left behind by Jun Daolin were no joke. After Nakayama of Silla and Xiao entered another spacetime, Zhong Shou looked at the pavilion below. In the next moment, he directly rushed towards the pavilion. Just as he arrived in front of the pavilion, his pupils suddenly shrank, and he suddenly turned around. Swoosh! Zhong Shou retreated thousands of feet away, but one of his arms was forever left in the same place. After Zhong Shou stopped, he looked at the part where his arm had been cut off, and there was no one there. Zhong Shou's expression became extremely ugly. Hidden Killer Pavilion Master. I didn't expect you to betray us as well. There was no response. Zhong Shou's expression became ferocious. Kill! As soon as he finished speaking, the experts from the law enforcement sect and Yunjie's side charged towards the pavilion below. Suddenly, over 10 black figures appeared in the surroundings. Assassins. Apart from that, There were also more than 30 experts in golden armor who appeared in the pavilion. The Daolin Guard. The middle-aged man who led the group gazed at the experts that charged down with an emotionless expression. Kill! As soon as he finished speaking, the experts behind him charged forward in unison. The battle had begun. Yunjia's side and the enforcement sect's side had quite a large number of experts, but they were unable to do anything to the hidden killer pavilion and Daolin Kingdom for now. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly looked towards the distant spacetime. Sect Master Xiao, activate the formation. Activate the formation. Nakayama of Silla, who was fighting Xiao, frowned when he heard this, and a trace of uneasiness arose in his heart. This was the enforcement sect. Suddenly, Xiao said, activate the grand formation. As soon as he finished speaking, numerous grand formations within the enforcement sect were activated, and then countless powerful forces smashed towards the experts from the Daolin Kingdom. The experts' expressions instantly changed drastically. They were already at a disadvantage, so how could they resist the grand formations? Meanwhile, 3 Daolin realm experts from the enforcement sect suddenly charged towards the pavilion. Their true targets were Yi Xian and Yen Puanshan. To be more precise, it was Yen Puanshan. Once Yen Puanshan attained the inaction realm, then they could just slit their own throats. The inaction realm. It was absolutely not something that Daolin realm experts could resist. Chapter 1973. He had to kill Yen Peishan. The experts from the enforcement sect and Yunjia charged madly towards the pavilion. However, the experts from the hidden kill pavilion and the kingdom of Lindao had been stopped, and they couldn't provide assistance at all. Meanwhile, a woman suddenly appeared in the pavilion. It was none other than Xu Wang. There wasn't a shred of fear in Xu Wang's eyes as she gazed at the experts that were charging at her. She'd given up on charging into the Heartless Realm, because Yi Xian needed help at this moment. She knew that her current strength wasn't enough to stop them at all. Their cultivations were much higher than hers, but she'd still come out. Xu Wang slowly closed her eyes as she gazed at the experts that were charging at her. Actually, she knew that she would definitely die. But she didn't regret her choice. Right at this moment, she suddenly opened her eyes and opened her palm. The green profound sword appeared in her hand, and in the next moment, she suddenly stabbed forward. Life and death were decided by drawing the sword. A sword strike with all her strength. A sword howl instantly shook the sky as she stabbed forward. It was a very powerful attack. Unfortunately, her opponent was a Daoist realm expert. The Daoist realm expert in the lead slammed his fist against the green profound sword, and the powerful force caused the sword to tremble violently. After that, the sword was blasted flying. At the same time, Xu Wang's right arm was shattered into pieces, and then she was blasted flying. When she finally stopped moving, her body had shattered, and only her soul remained. The Daoist realm experts didn't pay any attention to Xu Wang because her soul was vanishing at an extremely swift speed. Vanishing completely was only a matter of time. Suddenly, the green profound sword trembled violently, and then it transformed into a ray of light that shot into Xu Wang's soul that was about to vanish. Bang! The green profound sword protected Xu Wang's soul. Meanwhile, the pavilion suddenly transformed into nothingness, and then a man walked out. It was none other than Yi Xian. As soon as Yi Xian appeared, a Daoist realm expert appeared above him, and then he smashed his fist down. They knew that Yi Xian could ignore many aspects of space, so they didn't utilize the energy of space to deal with Yi Xian. Yi Xian stared at the incoming fist, his face expressionless. When the fist arrived in front of him, the space around him suddenly became illusory. Mysterious space-time. Yi Xian stomped his right foot. Boom! A powerful space-time pressure suddenly enveloped the Daoist realm expert. The Daoist realm expert's face instantly changed, but he didn't retract his fist. He still punched at Yi Xian's face. He'd already sensed that the space-time energy couldn't kill him at all, and this punch of his was sufficient to kill Yi Xian. Exchanging injuries for lives. This deal was worth it. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. At that moment he did not have the Qingxian sword and he did not dare to put it away. Once he did, the fabricated sword would disappear completely. Without the green profound sword, how was he supposed to fend off a Daoist? When he thought of this, Yi Xian's expression suddenly turned ferocious. Without the Qingxian sword, would he be useless? He took a step forward, and in an instant, countless sword lights engulfed him and the Daoist realm expert. Core sword domain. Once again, he used this sword technique that he thought was a little outdated. When he used this sword technique, there was only one thought in his mind. I'm a swordsman. Even without the Qingxian sword, I'm still a swordsman. However, reality was cruel. Boom. The sword lights shattered, and Yi Xian was blasted thousands of meters away. The Daoist realm expert was dumbfounded. He looked at his fist, and then at Yi Xian in the distance. From the way you appeared just now, I thought you were an expert, but I didn't expect. As he spoke, a flying sword suddenly slashed at him. The Daoist realm expert's lips curled into a disdainful smile, and he flicked his sleeve. Boom! The flying sword was blasted into pieces. In the distance, Yi Xian's face fell at the sight of that. Even though he'd attained the Heartless realm, there was still quite a huge gap between him and the Daoist realm. Meanwhile, the Daoist realm expert suddenly clenched his fist at Yi Xian from afar, and the space around Yi Xian was instantly obliterated. A ferocious expression flashed through Yi Xian's eyes, and he charged forward instead of retreating. He transformed into a ray of light that shot forward. A sharp sound of something tearing apart resounded. The Daoist realm expert raised his arm to block the attack. Bang! The ray of light shattered. At the same time, he smashed his left fist forward. Bang! The space before him sunk down, and then Yi Xian was instantly blasted flying. However, the Daoist realm expert fell into a dark spatial abyss at the instant he was blasted flying. A mysterious spatial abyss. The Daoist realm expert frowned as soon as he fell into the boundless abyss. At this moment, Xiao suddenly roared in anger, "What are you waiting for? Are you watching the show?" It turned out that there were a few dozen extraordinary experts in front of Yi Xian, and there were 6 Daoist realm experts amongst them. However, when Yi Xian was fighting with that Daoist realm powerhouse, these people did not make a move. The reason they hadn't chosen to attack was because they felt that it was quite unkind of them to interfere in a battle between 2 Daoist realm experts. But at this moment, they instantly returned to their senses when they heard Xiao. Without any hesitation, everyone dashed toward Yi Xian, who was not far away. The 6 Daoist realm experts in the lead even used their full strength. Obviously, they intended to kill Yi Xian with a single strike. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw so many charging at him, and he hurriedly roared with fury, "Big sister, you can just wait to bury me if you still don't show yourself." Meanwhile, laughter resounded abruptly, and then a ray of light flashed. The others hadn't even recovered from their shock when the head of the Daoist realm expert in the lead of the group that was charging at Yi Xian flew into the air and transformed into nothingness. It was an instant kill. Everyone was shocked. All the experts who were charging at Yi Xian retreated explosively. Meanwhile, Yang Xianxia appeared in front of Yi Xian, and she grinned as she gazed at Yi Xian. "How did you know that I would show myself?" Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, and then he said, "We're siblings by blood." Yang Xianxia roared with laughter, "Dad, I'll protect you." As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a strand of light appeared there. She gazed at the group of experts in the distance and smiled, "All of you, come over here." The expressions of those Daoist realm experts became extremely solemn when they heard this. Did she just instantly kill a Daoist realm expert? Everyone turned to look at Zhong Shou, who'd recovered his arm. Zhong Shou gazed at Yang Xianxia. "Who are you?" Yang Xianxia pointed at Yi Xian and smiled, "I'm his older sister." Zhong Shou frowned slightly, "Big sister?" Yang Xianxia nodded and smiled, "My real sister." A wisp of fear flashed through Zhong Shou's eyes as he glanced at the ray of light in Yang Xianxia's hand. He was quite fearful of that ray of light. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Big sister, kill him." Yang Xianxia rolled her eyes at Yi Xian, Dad always told me that I must win others over with virtue when I'm outside. Yi Xian was flabbergasted. Win others over with virtue? Is that father's style? Yi Xian walked over to Yang Yanxue's side and spoke via voice transmission. Big sister, how many rays of light did father leave for you? Yang Yanxue spoke softly. 3. I've already used 2. This is the last one. Yi Xian's face instantly fell when he heard this. 2. Is this a game? There are at least a dozen Daoist realm experts on the other side. Meanwhile, Yang Yanxue said, Don't worry, they don't know that I only have a single ray of light left. Yi Xian glanced at Yang Yanxue, and then he gazed at Zhong Shou and smiled. Did you see that Daoist realm expert from before? He wasn't even able to stop a ray of light our father left behind. If our father came here himself. TSK. The expressions of Zhong Shou and the others turned unsightly when they heard this. It was an instant kill. Merely a single ray of light had instantly killed a Daoist realm expert. Is he really a Daoist realm expert? Only a Daoist realm expert can accomplish this. This fellow has a Daoist realm expert behind him. When they thought up to this point, the expressions of Zhong Shou and the others turned even more unsightly. A Daoist realm expert. For a time, no one dared to move. Meanwhile, Xiao and Nakayama of Silla stopped as well. Nakayama of Silla came to Yi Xian's side. His face was extremely pale as if he'd suffered some sort of severe internal injury. Yi Xian looked at Nakayama of Silla with slight worry in his eyes. Senior, are you all right? Nakayama of Silla suddenly covered his mouth and coughed forcefully a few times. After that, he opened his palm, and within it was a pool of blood. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. Nakayama of Silla smiled bitterly. It's a small matter. A small matter? As he spoke, he started coughing violently again. Yi Xian hurried to say, Sir, take a good rest. Leave the rest to us. Nakayama of Silla's heart relaxed. Damn it, I've been waiting for you to say that. If they continue fighting, they'll really be risking their lives. At this moment, Nakayama of Silla seemed to have thought of something. He looked at a man in golden armor beside him. The man's expression was dejected. My king, we've lost 12 brothers. What? Nakayama of Silla suddenly burst into tears. Everyone was slightly stunned, and they all looked at Nakayama of Silla. Nakayama of Silla mumbled as if he'd lost his soul. I don't know whose sons they are. I don't know whose parents they are. I've let all of you down. As he spoke, he immediately burst into tears. Seeing this, Yi Xian felt even more guilty. Yi Xian walked in front of Nakayama of Silla and said guiltily, Senior. Nakayama of Silla suddenly pulled Yi Xian back. He shook his head and said painfully, No, it's not your fault. It's really not your fault. Don't feel guilty. Oh, please don't feel guilty. Yi Xian. Everyone looked at Nakayama of Silla with strange expressions. Seeing Nakayama of Silla in so much pain, Yi Xian felt even more guilty. At this moment, Xiao mocked. Nakayama of Silla, what are you putting on a show? Didn't you come here for the sake of Dao Ling's inheritance? T. Nakayama of Silla suddenly pointed at Xiao and cursed. Do you think everyone is as greedy as you? Do you think I came to stop you for the inheritance? I did it for the future of the entire Dao critical realm. I did it for justice. Justice will prevail. Everyone. P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 1974. Justice. Xiao Zhao's expression instantly became extremely unsightly when he heard Nakayama of Silla. Is he an idiot? He's even doing it for justice. He's really upright. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou walked over to Xiao Zhao's side, and then he hesitated for a moment before he said, We have to think of a way to deal with that woman. Xiao Zhao restrained his thoughts and gazed at Yang Yanxue. A wisp of fear flashed through his eyes when he saw the ray of light in Yang Yanxue's hand. He'd instantly killed a Dao-less realm expert. The owner of that ray of light was definitely an inaction realm expert. When he thought up to this point, Xiao Zhao's expression instantly grew even more unsightly. Presently, there were only two paths before them. The first was to continue killing. Kill Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan, and then obtain the inheritance. However, the risk of doing so was extremely high, because a true inaction realm expert might appear. The second path was to surrender. Was it too late to surrender now? Perhaps it was. However, he didn't want to surrender. Instead of living in humiliation, it was better to die a glorious death. When he thought up to here, Xiao Xiao slowly closed his eyes. Activate the formation. Bang! A ray of white light suddenly shot into the sky from within the enforcement sect. When it shot into the sky, it suddenly transformed into a strange white vortex, and then a huge sword emerged slowly from within it. As soon as the huge sword appeared, space actually started to tremble violently. This expanse of space couldn't endure the sword's strength at all. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Scylla's expression had become extremely solemn. The seamless sword formation. Yang Yanxue gazed at Nakayama of Scylla. The seamless sword formation? Nakayama of Scylla spoke solemnly. It's an ancient sword formation that was created by a sect master of the enforcement sect all those years ago. That sect master was at the quasi-inaction realm all those years ago. He used a few hundreds of years to create this formation, and every single sect master of the enforcement sect has maintained it with great care. So, it's growing stronger and stronger. Now, it can definitely kill a quasi-inaction realm expert with ease. The seamless sword formation. Hearing this, Yang Nianxue frowned. She only had a wisp of sword light. If she used it to break this formation, what would happen next? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stepped forward. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian pulled Yang Nianxue behind him and said seriously, "Big sister, let me carry it." Yang Nianxue frowned. "You," Yi Xian said seriously, "of course I'll be the one to do such a dangerous thing." Yang Nianxue pulled Yi Xian to her side and sent him a sound transmission with profound qi. "Don't think that I don't know that you can absorb sword qi." Yi Xian was speechless. At that moment, countless tiny sword qi suddenly appeared around the huge sword. These sword qi were like needles, densely packed, and it was a daunting sight to behold. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao suddenly spoke fiercely, "Yi Xian, even the gods can't save you today." As soon as he finished speaking, his right hand suddenly fell. Bang! In the sky, the huge sword carried countless strands of sword qi as it shot down violently. In an instant, the entire sky dimmed down. The expressions of Nakayama of Scylla and the others changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Suddenly Yi Xian roared, "I'll do it." As soon as he finished speaking, he shot into the sky and charged towards the huge sword. Everyone was slightly stunned. What does Yi Xian intend to do? Xiao Xiao frowned slightly, and a strand of uneasiness arose in his heart. At this moment, Yi Xian collided head-on with the giant sword. Bang! The spectators watched as the huge sword actually pierced into Yi Xian's body. In an instant, a powerful aura swept out from within him. At the same time, the countless strands of sword qi in the sky entered his body under his guidance. Bang! A powerful aura erupted from within Yi Xian, and it wasn't the aura of the heartless realm any longer. Xiao Xiao and the others were completely stunned when they witnessed this scene. What's going on? It wasn't just Xiao Xiao and the others, even Nakayama of Scylla was shocked. This fellow actually absorbed all those swords? Absorbed them? At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the sky, suddenly took a deep breath and shouted, "Awesome!" Needless to say, he felt really good at this moment because those strands of sword qi had increased his cultivation by too much. Everyone was speechless. Xiao Xiao stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and his face was as red as a pig's liver. Not only can this fellow ignore space and time, but he can even absorb swords? What sort of god is he? Meanwhile, Yi Xian clenched his right fist slowly, and the powerful aura in the surroundings instantly surged back into his body like tidewater. A trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. Almost. Just a little bit more and I'll be able to attain the thoughtless realm. My cultivation is sufficient. However, I still need to comprehend it. In my opinion, so long as I'm given another day, then I'll be able to attain the thoughtless realm. Of course, it's absolutely impossible for Qianxi to give me that much time. Meanwhile, Xiao suddenly opened his palm. In the next moment, a command token suddenly shot into the sky. Bang! The entire sky transformed into a huge vortex, and then an illusory middle-aged man walked out from within it. Ancestor summon. Nakayama of Scylla's face fell once more when he witnessed this scene, and he walked over to Yi Xian's side. Young Master Yi, that's the ancestor of the enforcement sect, Nianji. He attained the half-step inactivity realm all those years ago, and he wasn't just an ordinary half-step inactivity realm expert. Even though only a strand of his soul remains now, his strength far surpasses an ordinary Daoist realm expert. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Senior, can you defeat him?" Nakayama of Scylla hurriedly shook his head. "No. I'm no match for him." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Nianji suddenly spoke softly, "Is my enforcement sect in danger of being destroyed?" Xiao bowed respectfully, "Martial Ancestor." The experts of the enforcement sect bowed as well. "Greetings, Martial Ancestor." Nianji suddenly gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched, and he moved back to stand by Yang Nianshue's side. It was best to be careful when facing an expert at the level of an old monster. Nianji gazed at Yi Xian for a short while, and then he said, "Why have you come to destroy my enforcement sect?" Yi Xian spoke indifferently, "Senior, I'm not the one who wants to destroy your enforcement sect, it's your enforcement sect that wants to take my sword." As he spoke, he gazed at Xu Wang. At this moment, Xu Wang's soul had recovered, and he issued a command in his heart, causing the green profound sword to fly over to Nianji. "It's this sword." Nianji gazed at the green profound sword. He'd intended to take it, but for some unknown reason he didn't grasp it. A short while later, Nianji turned to look at Xiao. "Is there something wrong with your head?" Xiao was taken aback. "Martial Ancestor," Nianji frowned slightly, "can't you feel the terror of this sword?" Xiao said in a deep voice, "It's just a sword." Nianji looked at Xiao. "How did you reach the Daoist realm?" Xiao's expression was a little ugly. Nianji sighed softly. "Logically speaking, life knower realm should be able to feel the terrifying karma of this sword. But you still can't feel it after reaching the Daoist realm. Or rather, you've already felt it, but it's still because of greed." Xiao said in a deep voice, "Does the martial ancestor know who he is?" Nianji shook his head. "He's not someone we can afford to offend." Xiao clenched his fists, and his expression was extremely gloomy. As soon as Nianji said this, the expressions of the enforcement sect's experts turned ugly. Even their martial ancestors said they couldn't offend him? What else could they do? Nianji suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Little friend, where is the person who made this sword? Is she at the Daoist realm?" Yi Xian smiled. "I don't know where she is. As for whether she's at the Daoist realm, I don't know either." Nianji fell silent for a moment before he said, "Little friend, how about this? Let's shake hands and make peace." Shake hands and make peace. Yi Xian was stunned. He didn't expect that the old man would actually propose to shake hands and make peace. Meanwhile, Xiao suddenly roared furiously, "No!" As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Xiao. Nakayama of Scylla, who led the group, sneered, "Sect Master Xiao, you're really amazing. Are you going to betray your martial ancestor?" Nianji looked at Xiao, and Xiao said in a deep voice, "Martial Ancestor, the enforcement sect and I are absolutely irreconcilable with this person. If we don't eliminate him today, then once he's allowed to grow, our enforcement sect will be in danger." Nianji looked at Xiao. "Do you think you can kill him?" Xiao's expression gradually turned ferocious. "Why not? My enforcement sect hasn't utilized any trump cards, so it isn't difficult to kill him." As he spoke, he bowed deeply. "Martial Ancestor, it wasn't easy for our enforcement sect to develop until now. It's even more difficult for us to cultivate until now. If we eliminate Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan today, then the Daoist realm experts of our enforcement sect might be able to truly attain the inaction realm. At that time, our enforcement sect will become the strongest power in the entire Dao descent world. The inaction realm. The Daoist realm experts of the enforcement sect were instantly tempted when they heard Xiao Xiao. After all, Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan definitely possessed a Dao Ling's inheritance. If they killed Yi Xian, then they would be able to stop Yan Bianshan from attaining the inaction realm. Moreover, they would be able to seize Yan Bianshan's inheritance. Once they obtained Yan Bianshan's inheritance, then they would have a chance to attain the inaction realm of legend. Meanwhile, Nianji sighed softly. You're dreaming. Do you know that the knowledge contained within this sword has exceeded the scope of our universe? In other words, the person who created this sword was at least an inaction realm expert, and only Jun Daolin had attained the inaction realm in our universe. However, he probably wasn't the one who created this sword. Do you know what this means? It means that there's an unknown world and an unknown extraordinary expert in our universe. Nakayama of Silla, who stood by Yi Xian's side, gave him a thumbs up, as expected of our ancestor. Your intelligence really isn't ordinary. I'm impressed. Xiao Xiao remained silent with a gloomy expression, and no one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Nianji continued, it's normal for people to be greedy. However, don't let greed blind your mind. Some people can be enemies with others, and some absolutely can't be enemies with. This is the way of survival. Do you understand? Xiao Xiao gazed at Nianji. I finally understand why the founding ancestor was stuck at the half-step inaction realm all his life. Because the founding ancestor was too overcautious in everything he did. How could he accomplish great things if he was so overcautious? As he spoke, he pointed angrily towards the sky. I, Xiao Xiao, don't believe in fate. Besides myself, I don't believe in anyone. My fate is up to me, not the heavens. Nianji's expression froze. Chapter 1975. My fate is up to me, not the heavens. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they heard this. Yi Xian's face was covered in astonishment as well. That fellow has a temper. Nakayama of Silla shook his head as well. Amazing! Nianji sighed softly with a complicated expression on his face. He didn't know what to say when he encountered such a disciple of the later generations. Suddenly Xiao Xiao spoke coldly, Farewell, ancestor. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a pitch-black command token appeared there. In the next moment, Nianji's soul gradually became ethereal. He was going to put away the obsession soul. Nianji glanced at the experts of the enforcement sect. What's your choice? All the experts of the enforcement sect fell silent. Xiao Zhao's face was emotionless. Martial ancestor, we want to give it a try. Nianji nodded lightly. I understand. As he spoke, his figure gradually became ethereal. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla suddenly said, Senior, you can kill Xiao Xiao. In that way, you'll be able to save your enforcement sect. Xiao Xiao glanced coldly at Nakayama of Silla while the killing intent in his eyes seemed material. Nianji shook his head and smiled. I've already perished, so it doesn't matter to me whether the enforcement sect exists or not. Nakayama of Silla spoke in a low voice. Are you just going to watch as they court death? Nianji smiled. That's their choice. As soon as he finished speaking, his soul vanished like smoke. He'd vanished completely. He didn't choose to return to the command token and protect the enforcement sect, because he knew the outcome. Moreover, he was utterly unable to change anything. Even though he was the ancestor of the enforcement sect, this wasn't his era anymore. After all, a new emperor brought his own ministers. So, he chose to leave in peace. After Nianji left, Nakayama of Silla, who stood by Yi Xian's side, suddenly said, Young brother Yi, should we retreat? Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he asked, Do we have a chance at victory? Nakayama of Silla transmitted his voice using profound energy. Is there only one sword light in your sister's hand? Yi Xian looked at Nakayama of Silla. How did you know? Nakayama of Silla said in a low voice. If she had many Daoists, would she still be standing here watching Xiao Xiao act tough? Yi Xian was speechless. Nakayama of Silla said solemnly, Let's retreat to Daolin Nation. Yi Xian nodded. I'll listen to Senior. The corners of Nakayama of Scylla's mouth twitched. He waved his right hand. Retreat! Retreat! With that, the group of people turned around and fled. Meanwhile, a wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Xiao Zhao's eyes. You want to retreat? With that, he waved his hand. Kill! As soon as he finished speaking, the experts from the law enforcement sect and the experts from Yunjie rushed out. At this moment, many assassins suddenly appeared in the surroundings. The hidden killer's pavilion brought up the rear. Xiao Xiao opened his palm, and 9 black wooden tablets suddenly floated out. In the next moment, the 9 wooden tablets suddenly exploded, and 9 mysterious people wrapped in black cloths appeared. As soon as the 9 mysterious people appeared, Nakayama of Scylla's expression changed drastically. Corpse generals. The law enforcement sect actually refined corpse generals. Yi Xian was slightly curious. Senior, what are corpse generals? Nakayama of Scylla said in a low voice. Many years ago, there was a superpower in Daolin Nation called the Corpse God Sect. This sect is extremely skilled in refining corpses. As he spoke, he turned around and glanced at the surroundings. These corpse generals are at least Daoist realm experts. After being refined using a special secret technique, these corpse generals become even more terrifying. Back then, the Corpse God sect refined a large number of corpse generals. At their peak, they had over 1,000 corpse generals. Later on, when my Daolin Nation's ancestor emerged from his closed-door cultivation, he annihilated them, because the method of refining corpse generals is extremely cruel. For example, the souls of these corpse generals that you see now actually still exist. However, their souls are imprisoned within their corpses. Moreover, they're being controlled by the person who refined them. Yi Xian was about to speak when 6 corpse generals appeared before the 3 of them. Yi Xian noticed that these 3 corpse generals had stopped all the assassins from the Hidden Killer's Pavilion. Even the pavilion master of the Hidden Killer's Pavilion had been stopped. Yi Xian gazed at Nakayama of Scylla. Senior, how many are you fighting? Nakayama of Scylla raised a finger. Yi Xian hurriedly said, all of them? All right. Nakayama of Scylla was dumbfounded. Do you not know how to count? I'll say 1. Yi Xian's face darkened. Senior, your cultivation level is so much higher than mine. Aren't you embarrassed to fight one? Nakayama of Scylla nodded. Of course I am. Yi Xian's expression froze. At this moment, Xiao Xiao and Zhong Shou appeared before Yi Xian's group of 3. Xiao Xiao glanced at Yang Yanxue, who was hiding behind Yi Xian. He had not forgotten the sword gleam in Yang Yanxue's hand. Xiao Xiao said solemnly, Miss, if you're willing to leave, we won't stop you. Yang Yanxue's eyes lit up. Really? Nakayama of Scylla and Yi Xian turned to look at Yang Yanxue. Both of their faces were filled with astonishment. Yang Yanxue said seriously, I'm just asking. I don't mean anything else. Yi Xian and Nakayama of Scylla exchanged glances. Both of them were slightly flustered. Nakayama of Scylla said softly, Are you sure she's your biological sister? Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, Most of the time, I'm not so sure. Nakayama of Scylla was speechless. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao said, Miss, if I'm not wrong, there's only 1 sword gleam left in your hand. Am I right? Yang Yanxue remained silent. Xiao Xiao continued, That sword gleam of yours is really powerful. We can't stop it. However, you can only kill 1 person, right? Yang Yanxue's lips curled up slightly. Then I'll kill you. As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm, and a ray of sword gleams suddenly flew out. The ray of sword gleam's target was Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao's expression changed drastically. At this moment, he smelled the scent of death. If he were to stop that ray of sword gleam, he would definitely not be able to. Of course, he wouldn't do it himself. A corpse general appeared in front of Xiao Xiao, and then it smashed its fist forward. It was a head-on attack. Everyone watched as the corpse general was obliterated. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao had fled over 30 kilometers away. A trace of fear appeared in Xiao Zhao's eyes for the first time when he saw the terrifying corpse general being obliterated just like that. He knew very well how terrifying the corpse general was. It could be said that even he couldn't do anything to it, because the corpse general's body was at the half-step inactivity realm. However, such a terrifying body had been slashed into pieces like tofu by that ray of sword gleam. That ray of sword gleam was actually so terrifying. A trace of fear arose in Xiao Zhao's heart, but it didn't take long for him to suppress it. At this moment he had no way out. Xiao Zhao raised his head and looked towards the distance. A moment later he was stunned. That woman was gone. It wasn't just Xiao Zhao, Yixian and Nakayama of Silla were stunned as well. Yang Nianxue had fled right after she shot that ray of sword gleam. She's fled. Yixian was quite stunned. That's his own sister. She fled just like that? Blood is thicker than water. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhao gazed at Nakayama of Silla, and he spoke fiercely, "Kill him first." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 corpse generals charged at Nakayama of Silla. Nakayama of Silla's expression changed drastically. "Are you fucking mad?" Xiao Zhao stared fixedly at Nakayama of Silla. "I've fucking hated the sight of you for a very long time." Compared to Yixian, he actually hated Nakayama of Silla even more. He felt that it was normal for Yixian to be shameless. After all, Yixian's strength was low, and he was like a child. So, it was understandable for him to be shameless. But who was Nakayama of Silla? He was at the Daoist realm. However, he was so shameless and always spoke sarcastic words. He hated it. Xiao Zhao attacked Nakayama of Silla first. Meanwhile, Yixian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. But it didn't take long for his expression to turn gloomy, because there were 2 corpse generals in front of him. Moreover, Zhong Shou and Xiao Zhao were staring at him. Their main target was still him. Yixian glanced at Yan Bianshan, who was in Xiaota. At this moment, Yan Bianshan was like an old monk in meditation, and he didn't move at all. "I can't count on him at all." Xiao Zhao suddenly said, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 corpse generals by his side charged at Yixian. A vicious expression flashed through Yixian's eyes. He opened his palm, and the green profound sword suddenly flew out. Bang! A ray of light slashed against the corpse general in the lead, and the green profound sword was blasted away. However, a deep gash was left behind on the corpse general's body. Xiao Zhao's face instantly fell when he witnessed this scene. That sword was actually able to damage the corpse general's body. Meanwhile, the 3 corpse generals had charged over to Yixian. Yixian issued a command in his heart, and a sword and shield appeared in front of him. Bang! 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 The sword and shield shook violently, and then Yixian was blasted over 10 kilometers away. At the instant that his figure stopped, the sword and shield in front of him suddenly transformed into a ray of light that slashed forward. Bang! The corpse general that charged towards him was instantly stopped on the spot by the ray of light. But right at this moment, a fist suddenly appeared on Yixian's right, and it headed straight for his head with the intention of shattering his head. Yixian stomped his right foot on the ground and activated the sword domain. An expanse of light enveloped him and the corpse general. However, the light was instantly shattered as soon as it appeared. Bang! As soon as the light was shattered, Yixian's figure was blasted over 10 kilometers away. He just stopped when a terrifying force swept towards him. Yixian's pupils constricted. He issued a command in his heart, and the green profound sword transformed into a shield that blocked in front of him once more. Bang! The shield shook violently, and then an expanse of light erupted. Yixian retreated explosively once more. However, while he was retreating, a corpse general had suddenly appeared in front of him, and then it smashed its fist towards Yixian's face. It hadn't utilized any spatial energy, and it was just the purest form of strength. Such strength might not pose much of a threat to an ordinary person. After all, that person could rely on spatial energy to resist it. However, such pure strength was extremely threatening to Yixian. At this critical moment, Yixian sensed the aura of death once more. He hadn't sensed such an aura in a very long time. At this instant, Yixian suddenly started laughing. As soon as he started laughing, the blood within his body suddenly started seething. In an instant, his entire body was covered in blood. In the next moment, the entire sky had turned blood red like an ocean of blood, and it was extremely bloody. The energy of his bloodline. After a very long time, he'd activated his bloodline once more. As the power of the bloodline was activated, an extremely terrifying aura swept out from the field. P.S. Please vote. Chapter 1976. At the instant his bloodline energy was activated, Yixian issued a command in his heart, and a ray of blood-red light slashed through the battlefield. Bang! In front of Yixian, the corpse general was sent flying thousands of feet away. When the corpse general came to a stop, its body split open. Xiao and the others had unsightly expressions on their faces when they witnessed the scene. They hadn't imagined that Yixian would actually have more trump cards. Bloodline energy. What sort of bloodline energy is that? It's actually able to improve Yixian's strength by so much. Xiao turned around to gaze at Zhong Shou with a gloomy expression. Are you still holding back at a time like this? Xiao had utilized practically all his trump cards up until this point. Yet now Yunjie was still holding back. This caused him to be extremely displeased. Zhong Shou fell silent. Actually, he'd had the intention to retreat since the very beginning. Because even the founding ancestor of the enforcement sect didn't dare offend this fellow. However, he knew that he and Yunjie had no way out now. If he retreated and allowed Yixian to mature or Yan Bianshan to attain the inaction realm, then both his and Yunjie's lives would be at Yunjie's mercy. Xiao spoke indifferently. What? Do you think you still have a way out now? The hesitation in Zhong Shou's eyes vanished when he heard this. He opened his palm, and a strand of green smoke floated up into the air. In the next moment, the space in the surroundings started trembling violently, and it didn't take long for 12 white-robed old men to walk out from the surroundings. Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly. Divine General Yun. Divine General Yun. This was a mysterious team that Ancestor Yunjie had established all those years ago. Supposedly, there were 36 of them, and 9 of them were even at the half-step inaction realm. Following which, along with the fall of the Cloud World Ancestor, this mysterious team also disappeared. Yet now they'd appeared once more. Even though there were only 12 of them, all 12 of them were at the peak of the Daoist realm. These were all veteran Daoist realm powerhouses. Be it their combat strength or their foundation, they were all top-notch. Along with the appearance of these 12 people, the situation had undergone a tremendous change. Crushing. In terms of lineups and numbers, Yunjie and the law enforcement sect had completely crushed Yixian's side. On the other side, Nakayama of Silla and the Hidden Killer Pavilion Master's faces darkened. Based on the current lineup, the Hidden Killer's Pavilion and the Zhonglin Dao Nation had been completely crushed. This was especially so for the Hidden Killer Pavilion's Pavilion Master. He felt a headache coming on. His people were all assassins and they were not good at fighting head-on. Up until now, he had already lost many assassins. If they continued fighting like this, they would all be wiped out. At this moment, Zhong Shou suddenly looked at Yixian from afar. Kill! Kill! As soon as he finished speaking, the 12 divine generals charged at Yixian, and then over a dozen formidable auras swept through the surroundings like a tidal wave. For a time, space throughout the heavens and the earth had become illusory. Yixian, who'd activated his bloodline, frowned. At this moment, he still had a trace of consciousness. His face fell when he saw the 12 Daoist realm experts charge at him. Damn it! These old fellows don't care about martial virtue. They're actually ganging up on me. I have no choice but to go all out. Yixian was just about to attack when the space around him suddenly trembled. A moment later, 9 experts in golden armor suddenly appeared around Yixian, the Imperial Guard of the Lindao Nation. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla, who was being pressed down by 3 corpse generals, spoke abruptly. Little fellow, retreat for now and head to my Lindao nation. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, Senior, will you cover our retreat? Nakayama of Silla replied, Of course. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, That's not a good idea, right? Nakayama of Silla spoke angrily, Then you cover our retreat. Yi Xian didn't even look back as he vanished into the distance. Senior, take care. Nakayama of Silla was speechless. A ferocious expression flashed through Xiao Zhao's eyes when he saw Yi Xian flee. Where do you think you're going? As he spoke, he suddenly vanished on the spot. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. He drew his sword to decide life and death. An expanse of blood-red light shot out like a waterfall. Xiao Zhao's pupils constricted as he charged towards Yi Xian. However, he didn't retreat, and he smashed his fist forward instead. He was going head-on against Yi Xian. He knew how terrifying Yi Xian's sword was, and he would only suffer a worse fate if he retreated, because Yi Xian's sword was extremely swift. Bang! An expanse of sword light erupted, and Xiao Zhao retreated explosively for thousands of meters. As soon as he stopped moving, a flying sword suddenly slashed towards him. Xiao Zhao dodged to the side and avoided this lethal strike by a hair's breadth. However, his arms suddenly shattered into nothingness when he was about to continue chasing. Xiao Zhao's expression turned unsightly. Go after him. Don't let him escape to the Lindao nation. He didn't know what trump cards the Lindao nation had, but he didn't dare to underestimate them, because the ancestor of the Lindao nation was Jun Daolin. Zhong Shou and the others rushed out at the first possible moment. Meanwhile, the two corpse generals and divine generals Yun gave up on chasing Nakayama of Silla and chased after Yi Xian. Nakayama of Silla heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. Fortunately, Yi Xian had fled to attract the enemy's firepower. Otherwise, he might not be able to hold on if this continued. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, a black-robed figure appeared by Nakayama of Silla's side. It was the pavilion master of the Hidden Killer Pavilion. The pavilion master spoke in a low voice. Nakayama of Silla, aren't you afraid that he'll be killed? Nakayama of Silla spoke softly. How could that be? He won't die even if we die. The pavilion master frowned slightly. Why? Nakayama of Silla spoke indifferently. Because he has someone backing him. The pavilion master was speechless. Nakayama of Silla glanced at the surroundings and said, Let's go. We'll wait for him at the Lindao nation. As he spoke, he turned around and left. The pavilion master hesitated for a moment and said, Aren't you afraid that he'll be killed? Nakayama of Silla didn't even turn around. We'll make a huge profit if he doesn't die. If he dies, we won't lose out either because the person backing him will definitely avenge him. When the law enforcement sect and Yunjie kill him, it'll be the day they'll be annihilated. At that time, we'll also make a profit. The pavilion master said, We'll definitely make a profit? Nakayama of Silla nodded. Don't worry, Invikil. I asked you to protect this little guy. I won't cheat you. It won't be long before you and I reach the legendary inviolable state. After a moment of silence, Invikil said, I hope so. As he spoke, he paused and asked again, Up until now, the only people who have reached the inviolable state in the entire Dao nation's history are Jun Daolin and Dao Ling, who might reach the inviolable state. As for the person backing young Master Yi, in the distance, Nakayama of Silla stopped and spoke softly. That's why it's terrifying. Because it means that our Dao nation isn't at the peak of this universe. As he spoke, he turned around and left. Invikil fell silent. At the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. He had already raised his speed to the limit. Because he had activated his bloodline and Qingxian sword, Xiao Zhao and the others couldn't catch up to him for a while. However, he didn't leave them behind either. Yi Xian's expression was extremely ugly. He realized that when he chose to escape, all the powerhouses chased after him. Behind him, there were a total of 39 Daoist realm powerhouses. 39. Among them, the corpse generals and divine general Yun weren't ordinary Daoist realm powerhouses. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Xiao Ta, If Dad encountered such a situation, what would he do? Xiao Ta fell silent. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Don't play dead. Xiao Ta said, when Master encounters such a situation, he usually fights with his life. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, do you think I can win if I fight with my life on the line? Xiao Ta said, you can't win. Yi Xian asked, then do you have any ideas? After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, based on the current situation, I suggest that you surrender, young master. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the space-time in front of Yi Xian suddenly split open. The next moment, an afterimage swept over. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and the Qingxian sword in his hand suddenly flew out. Pissed. Space-time tore open, and the afterimage was sent flying. And with that pause, Xiao Xiao and the others appeared in front of him. He was surrounded. Yi Xian looked at the dozens of Daoist realm powerhouses around him and sighed inwardly. At this moment, Xiao Xiao, who was in the lead, suddenly said, kill. No nonsense. He didn't want to give Yi Xian any chance. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, I surrender. Surrender. As soon as he said that, the powerhouses who were about to attack stopped. Xiao Xiao frowned slightly. Surrender? Yi Xian nodded. I can't win. I surrender. Xiao Xiao looked at Yi Xian. Since you surrender, then hand over the sword in your hand and Yen Banyi. Yi Xian nodded. All right. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the Qingxian sword flew to Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly, and he glanced at Yi Xian before holding the Qingxian sword. The moment he held the Qingxian sword, he frowned again. A wave of uneasiness silently spread from the bottom of his heart. Yi Xian said, aren't all of you curious about the person behind me? You can sense the person behind me through this sword. After looking at Yi Xian for a moment, Xiao Xiao suddenly let go of the Qingxian sword. Why should I sense the person behind you? Yi Xian's expression froze. Xiao Xiao sneered. Yi Xian, you said that you surrendered on purpose, and then gave me the sword. Your goal is to make me use this sword to sense the person behind you, and then use that person to kill me. As he spoke up to this point, his expression turned gloomy. Do I look like an idiot to you? Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it, this idiot doesn't play by the rules. Xiao Xiao put away the Qingxian sword, and then he said, Yi Xian, I know that there's someone behind you, and I know that the person behind you is extremely strong. But let me tell you, you must die today. Unless you call the person behind you over right now. Otherwise, you're dead today. As he spoke, he waved his hand. Kill. As soon as he spoke, the powerhouses around him charged at Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes, and the blood in his body boiled. One person against over 30 Daoist realm powerhouses? It was absolutely impossible. Although his strength had grown very quickly, and with the Qingxian sword, his combat strength could go head-on against Daoist realm powerhouses. However, there were dozens of Daoist realm powerhouses in front of him. How could he play this fight? Yi Xian knew that this was the only way out for him. Gradually, the aura around him grew stronger, and the hint of sobriety in his eyes faded bit by bit. At this moment, Xiao Ta's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Young lord, do you want to try to sense Sister Tianming? Yi Xian laughed. No. As soon as he said that, the last hint of sobriety in his eyes disappeared. He had completely entered a state of madness. Chapter 1977. Could he sense Qing'er? Actually he could. Even others could, so why couldn't he? So long as he wanted to, he would definitely be able to contact Qing'er, because Qing'er wouldn't reject him. However, he didn't want to do that. It was completely different for others to sense Qing'er and him to sense Qing'er. If he tried to sense Qing'er by himself, then he would have to rely on Qing'er for his entire lifetime. Because once he encountered any difficulties, then he wouldn't think of a way to overcome them by himself, and he'd try to sense Qing'er instead. If that happened, then he would be crippled. Because if that happened, then why would he need to cultivate? Wouldn't it be better to stay by Qing Er's side all the time? Moreover, so long as he was by Qing Er's side, then he would be invincible. So, not taking the initiative to sense Qing Er was his bottom line. When his last trace of consciousness vanished, bang, a terrifying aura suddenly swept out from within him, and then the space in the surroundings instantly started seething. He issued a command in his heart, and then countless blood-red swords of energy shot out from behind him. Divine General Yun, who was charging at the front, suddenly raised his arm to block them. Bang! The sword energy arrived before him, and its formidable force blasted him flying over 1 kilometer away. Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Soul!" In the distance, the expression of Xiao Xiao, who was about to attack, changed drastically. A sword howl resounded from within him. A moment later, Soul charged through his seal, and then it transformed into a ray of blood-red light that shot into Yi Xian's grasp. Xiao Xiao was astounded when he witnessed this scene. That sword was actually able to charge through his seal? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly slashed forward with the azure sword in hand, and a ray of sword light shot out like a waterfall. The corpse general that was charging at the front was directly slashed flying, and it flew 30 kilometers away. When it finally came to a stop, its body had actually split into countless pieces. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Even that corpse general couldn't resist Yi Xian's sword? For a time, the Daoist realm experts actually didn't dare to move. Because Yi Xian's attack just now was equivalent to instantly killing a corpse general. At this moment, Yi Xian seemed to be covered in blood. The space-time he was in was like a sea of blood. Powerful auras surged out from his body. Most importantly, his aura was getting stronger and stronger. Xiao Xiao said in a low voice, "His aura is growing stronger and stronger. It means that he's utilizing a secret technique, and such a technique is usually unable to last for long. We just have to delay him for a while, and then he'll definitely die." Hearing this, everyone nodded their heads. The current Yi Xian was completely abnormal. He was overdrafting his own strength, and this kind of overdraft usually couldn't last for too long. As long as they delayed, Yi Xian would definitely die. Right at this moment, a sword suddenly appeared on the forehead of a Divine General Yun in the distance. A stream of blood shot out from the back of Divine General Yun's head. Everyone was astounded. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. The Qingxian sword had returned to his hand, and at this moment, the Qingxian sword in his hand was trembling slightly. This was because the Qingxian sword had absorbed the divine soul of Divine General Yun. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly spoke fiercely, "Die." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a golden mirror appeared in his grasp. A moment later, he flipped his palm, and the golden mirror suddenly shone towards Yi Xian. After that, a golden beam of light surged out and shot towards Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian swung his sword backhandedly. Bang! The golden beam of light instantly shattered and transformed into nothingness. Zhong Shou was stunned by this scene. "It's gone just like that?" Zhong Shou glanced at the mirror in his hand. It was Yunjia's #1 divine artifact, the Divine Cloud Mirror. If he utilized it, then even a Daoist realm expert would find it difficult to resist its might. But this fellow had actually shattered it with a single swing of his sword? The expressions of Xiao Xiao and the others had become extremely unsightly. Because Yi Xian's strength had actually risen to such an extent. Most importantly, this fellow's aura was still rising explosively as if it had no limit. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao suddenly spoke in a low voice, "Wait. He's definitely going to be unable to hold on any longer." Zhong Shou hesitated for a moment and said, "Should we attack him together? He'll definitely die if we attack him together." Xiao Xiao shook her head. "Even though we can kill him if we attack him together, his current strength and that sword in his possession can definitely be exchanged for many of us. That's too much of a loss. We just have to delay him a little longer. At that time, we don't even have to do anything because he'll be finished by himself." Zhong Shou gazed at Yi Xian while his brows knit together slightly. Actually, he was quite uneasy right now. Because up until now, Yi Xian's aura was still rising explosively. Most importantly, this fellow didn't seem to be on the verge of suffering backlash. However, he knew that he would definitely suffer backlash if he utilized such a secret technique. When he thought up to here, Zhong Shou spoke in a low voice. Everyone, set up the formation. As he spoke, he was about to attack. Meanwhile, Xiao shook her head once more. There's no need to set up the formation. That sword of his can disregard space, so space-time formations are utterly useless against him. We just have to keep our distance from him, and all of us can attack together to stop his flying sword when he attacks. The others nodded in agreement. Presently, they didn't want to go head-on against Yi Xian as well. Because Yi Xian was simply a madman, an abnormal madman. Most importantly, his sword was extremely terrifying. The first person to attack him had a very high chance of dying. No one was confident in their ability to resist a single strike of Yi Xian's sword at this moment. On the other hand, Yi Xian had no intention of attacking in the distance. He just stood there as if he was waiting for something. Yi Xian held the green profound sword in his right hand, and it had transformed into a blood-red sword. The green profound sword wasn't a sword spirit, so it was able to keep his mind clear. At this moment, he'd entered a completely berserk state. However, he didn't attack and he was waiting. No one knew what he was waiting for. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly said, "Retreat!" Because the space before them had actually turned blood red, and even they were affected by the killing intent and evil energy within it. All of them retreated over 10 kilometers when they heard this. However, they'd surrounded Yi Xian, so it was utterly impossible for Yi Xian to flee now. Just like that, time passed slowly. Yi Xian's aura was still rising explosively, but he still showed no signs of suffering backlash. The expressions of Zhong Shou and the others grew more and more unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly said, "Sect Master Xiao, let your corpse general hold him back for now, and then we'll attack together to kill him. What do you think?" Xiao fell silent. With Yi Xian's current strength, if the corpse general attacked him, then he would most likely be killed. Moreover, he might even lose more than one corpse general. Presently, the law enforcement sect didn't have many corpse generals left. If they lost even more. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou spoke solemnly, "Sect Master Xiao, how about this? I'll send out Divine General Yun, and you send out a corpse general. 2 peak Daoist realm experts will be enough to hold him back. So long as we can hold him back, then we'll be able to kill him. Otherwise, something unexpected might happen if this continues." Xiao glanced at Yi Xian, who didn't move, and he fell silent for a moment before he said, "All right." As soon as he finished speaking, he issued a command in his heart, and a corpse general charged at Yi Xian. At the same time, another Divine General Yun charged over as well. However, he was slightly smarter, and he'd slowed down on purpose. At the instant that Divine General Yun and the corpse general charged over, Xiao and the others immediately attacked as well. Just as the corpse general was about to reach Yi Xian suddenly raised his head. In the next moment, before anyone could react, a beam of sword light slashed at the corpse general. Bang! The corpse general was instantly obliterated. Right at this instant, the azure sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. At the same time, a blood-red armor appeared around his body. The armor protected his entire body. At practically the exact same moment, countless powerful strands of energy drowned Yi Xian. Rumble! 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 For a time, the entire heavens and the earth shook violently. How terrifying was it when a few dozen Daoist realm experts attacked in unison. In an instant, the area where Yi Xian stood had been transformed into a pitch-black vortex, and the space where he stood had been obliterated. It didn't take long for Xiao and the others to be stunned, because they noticed that while the space where Yi Xian stood had been obliterated, Yi Xian was still alive. He was still alive. Zhong Shou gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief. How could this be possible? Xiao's eyes were filled with disbelief as well, and his hands had started to tremble. It was a full-force attack from a few dozen Daoist realm experts. But this fellow actually resisted it? What sort of monster is he? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Along with his disappearance, a blood-red sword light flashed through the battlefield. One of the divine General Yun's brows were pierced through by a sword before he could even react. Meanwhile, all of them reacted to what had happened. Zhong Shou roared furiously, "Kill him! Kill him!" Upon hearing this, all the powerhouses present charged towards Yi Xian again. Suddenly, the sword in Yi Xian's hand transformed into a blood-red armor that enveloped his body. Rumble! Yi Xian was blasted by countless strands of energy again, and the space around him was obliterated. They were about to attack again when a terrifying force suddenly appeared here. The expressions of Zhong Shou and the others changed drastically, and they stopped what they were doing. They raised their heads and saw bolts of blood-red divine lightning suddenly appear in the sky. All of them were horrified by this scene, and they retreated explosively. The laws. Xiao Xiao and the others had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces. They'd actually forgotten that this expanse of space was covered in the energy of the laws that Jun Daolin had left behind. So long as they destroyed this expanse of space, then they would trigger the restrictions that Jun Daolin had left behind. But they'd actually forgotten about that just now. Suddenly, Xiao Xiao spoke furiously, "Retreat! Don't utilize any profound energy at all. Let Yi Xian deal with those laws." All of them retreated in unison, and then they restrained their auras. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly stood on the spot, and then his aura vanished. Moreover, it was like he didn't exist at all, and all of them dared to say that they couldn't sense him. Xiao Xiao was on the verge of exploding with rage when she witnessed this scene. "Have you really gone mad, or are you faking it?" All of them were speechless. Meanwhile, Xiaoda suddenly sighed softly. Even though the young master has gone mad, he's still wretched to the core. But he's still wretched in his bones. Chapter 1978. Is he really mad or is he faking it? Actually, Yi Xian had really gone mad right now. But just as Xiao had said, while he was mad, he was still a wretched person in his bones. However, he was still wretched in his bones. This was completely an instinct. Even a lunatic would have instincts. Meanwhile, the aura of the blood-red divine lightning in the sky was growing stronger, and it was so strong that it filled them with despair. It was the energy of the laws of peerless realm experts. Even if countless years had passed, it was still so strong that it filled them with despair. This was what an peerless realm expert was like. Xiao Xiao and the others gazed at the blood-red divine lightning, and besides fear, there was a trace of yearning in their eyes. Their lifelong pursuit was the peerless realm. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao suddenly gazed at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian was still standing there without moving, but his aura was still rising explosively. It really seemed like there was no limit to it. Xiao Xiao's expression turned unsightly when he witnessed this scene. Is this fellow's bloodline really immune to backlash? Zhong Shou suddenly spoke solemnly. His bloodline is... How terrifying! He's absolutely not an ordinary person. Xiao Xiao's expression was gloomy. I know he's not an ordinary person, but so what? Do we have a way out now? Zhong Shou fell silent. Actually, they had no way out since a very long time ago. If they cut off all means of retreat now, then they might have a chance at survival. When he thought up to here, Zhong Shou spoke solemnly, What should we do now? Xiao Xiao raised his head to glance at the energy of the laws, and then he said, We'll wait for the laws to vanish. Zhong Shou was just about to speak when the divine lightning suddenly rained down from the sky. Their targets were everyone here, including Yi Xian, everyone who'd attacked just now. The expressions of everyone here instantly changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Xiao Xiao roared furiously, Retreat for now. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately led the others to turn around and flee. As for Yi Xian, he was fleeing as well. However, the divine lightning seemed to have a mind of its own as it chased after them at an extremely fast speed. All the Daoist realm experts here were terrified out of their wits when they witnessed this scene, and then they fled desperately towards the distance. Yi Xian fled even faster, but he was still caught up by a blood-colored divine lightning. He suddenly turned around, and the green profound sword transformed into a sword shield in front of him. Rumble! The blood-colored divine lightning struck the green profound sword, causing it to tremble violently. Boom! Yi Xian was blasted hundreds of thousands of meters away along with his shield. As soon as he stopped moving, he spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Moreover, his body had even split apart. However, his sword and shield were still intact. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head. The bolt of blood-red lightning hadn't vanished, and it was chasing after him again. A trace of malevolence flashed across Yi Xian's eyes. He opened his palm and the azure profound sword appeared in his hand. He dashed forward and slashed down with his sword. A blood-red sword light slashed down and directly slashed the divine lightning. Bang! The sword light exploded into pieces while Yi Xian was blasted over 100 m away. When his figure finally stopped, he'd fallen into a spatial abyss. As soon as he entered the spatial abyss, countless strands of terrifying energy swept towards him like waves, and they were about to drown him. Yi Xian didn't dodge and allowed them to drown him. Bang! The spatial abyss seethed, but Yi Xian was completely fine. Meanwhile, the bolt of divine lightning didn't pursue him. It just stopped outside the spatial abyss, and it gradually started to vanish bit by bit as if it hadn't sensed Yi Xian's presence. As soon as the bolt of divine lightning vanished, Yi Xian charged forward. On the other side, because Xiao Zhao's group had come to an end as well. More than half of Xiao Zhao's group had perished. All the corpse generals had been annihilated. All of them had been annihilated. Because at the last moment of crisis, Xiao Zhao had gotten all the corpse generals to block in front of him. He had no choice but to do so. If he hadn't done so, he might have died. Yun Jie's group had also suffered heavy losses. More than half of them had perished, and Divine General Yun only had 2 left. Originally, both sides had 39 Daoist realm experts, but now, there were less than 10 of them left. Xiao Zhao's face was terrifyingly gloomy. Zhong Shou's face was ashen. "We're finished." Xiao Zhao said fiercely, "Kill that Yi Xian." Zhong Shou roared, "How are we going to kill him?" Xiao Zhao said, "Do you think he can withstand that divine lightning?" Hearing that, Zhong Shou's brows slightly furrowed. Xiao Zhao clenched his fists tightly. That divine lightning was left behind by Jun Daolin. It contains powerful law energy. Even a peak Daoist realm expert can't withstand it. Right at this moment, his voice stopped abruptly because the head of an expert from the enforcement sect had fallen slowly to the ground not too far away from him. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had appeared not too far away from them. As for Yi Xian, he was perfectly fine. Xiao Zhao instantly went mad when he witnessed this scene. How could you possibly? Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. A ray of blood-red light flashed through the battlefield like a thunderclap. Xiao Zhao's pupils constricted. He didn't retreat but charged forward instead, and then he smashed his fist towards Yi Xian's sword. He went head-on against it. As soon as his fist and sword collided, bang! Along with a world-shaking explosion, both of them retreated explosively at the same time. Moreover, when Xiao Zhao stopped moving, his entire right arm had transformed into nothingness. The expressions of Zhong Shou and the others instantly became extremely unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhao roared furiously, "What are all of you looking at? Fight him to the death!" All of them recovered from their shock when they heard Xiao Zhao, and a wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Zhong Shou's eyes. "Kill!" As soon as he spoke, all of them charged at Yi Xian. At this moment, they couldn't be bothered about anything else. Either you die or I die. Let's go all out. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly turned around and ran. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizon, leaving only a sea of blood behind him. All of them were stunned when they witnessed this scene. That fellow ran? He ran? He's not going to fight anymore? Zhong Shou and the others felt extremely aggrieved. It was like their punches had struck cotton. Suddenly, a ray of blood-red light flashed. The head of one of the Daoist realm experts flew into the air while blood sprayed over 10 m away. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically. All of them turned around to look at the ray of blood-red light that had vanished in the distance. He killed Xianxia and fled. The expressions of the Daoist realm experts were unsightly to the extreme when they witnessed this scene. Of course, there was even more fear in their hearts right now. At this moment, they were truly terrified. In the beginning, Yi Xian was only barely able to fight a Daoist realm expert. But now, Yi Xian could instantly kill a Daoist realm expert. Most importantly, Yi Xian's aura was still rising explosively. If this continues, then this fellow will probably even be able to kill a half-step in action realm expert. Their expressions grew even more unsightly when they thought up to this point. Meanwhile, Xiao spoke ferociously, "Hill." As he spoke up to this point, a ray of light suddenly appeared here. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically. Zhong Shou suddenly turned around and pressed his palms together. Bang! A sword was clamped between his palms, but it only took a moment for his palms to shatter. Meanwhile, the experts by his side attacked in unison. Rumble! An afterimage was blasted over 10 kilometers away. It was Yi Xian. As soon as he was blasted flying, Yi Xian turned around and flashed away, and he vanished into the horizon. He ran again. Zhong Shou's face was as red as a pig's liver. The surroundings suddenly fell deathly silent. What should we do? They didn't want to think about it, but they were helpless against Yi Xian now. No one could resist Yi Xian's current attack. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou gazed at Xiao. "Think of a way." All of them looked at Xiao. Xiao remained silent for a long time, and then he gazed at Zhong Shou. "Can you still summon your ancestor?" Zhong Shou spoke solemnly, "I can. But I'm worried that..." Xiao shook his head. "There's nothing we can do. Only a half-step in action realm expert can suppress him. Otherwise, we'll be exhausted to death if this continues." Meanwhile, a Daoist realm expert spoke abruptly. "Will he really not suffer backlash?" Everyone's faces fell once more. Backlash. A long time had passed since the beginning, but Yi Xian showed no signs of suffering from backlash. Conversely, this guy was becoming fiercer and fiercer. Xiao fell silent. In fact, he didn't understand it either. Up until now, Yi Xian showed no signs of suffering from backlash. Conversely, Yi Xian's strength had increased by countless times. What kind of bloodline is this? Most disgusting of all was that Yi Xian seemed like a madman, but he wasn't mad at all. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou suddenly opened his palm, and a token appeared in his hand. Immediately after that, the token floated up slowly and transformed into a wisp of green smoke that vanished into the horizon. Bang! Meanwhile, a figure appeared in the sky, and it gradually became material. It wasn't long before a middle-aged man appeared within their fields of vision. Zhong Shou and the others hurriedly bowed respectfully when they saw the middle-aged man. "Greetings, martial ancestor." The founder of Yunjie, Yunmingzi. At his peak, he was at half-step inanimate realm. Although it was only half-step, it was already very terrifying. There was still a world of difference between Daoist realm and half-step inanimate realm. At this moment, Yunmingzi looked down at Zhong Shou with an expressionless face. "What's wrong?" Zhong Shou bowed respectfully and then recounted what had happened. When Zhong Shou finished, Yunmingzi narrowed his eyes slightly. "That Yi Xian has Dao Ling's inheritance?" Zhong Shou hurriedly said, "Yes." Hearing that, the corners of Yunmingzi's mouth lifted slightly. Interesting. He actually has Dao Ling's inheritance, and this Dao Ling." At this point, a trace of unwillingness flashed in his eyes. "I never thought that someone in the future could reach inanimate realm." Zhong Shou and the others didn't dare to speak. At this moment, Yunmingzi looked into the distance and said indifferently, "Still hiding." As soon as he said that, he grabbed the air with his right hand. With this grab, the space-time there suddenly distorted, and the next moment, a blood-colored sword light tore through the air. Seeing this scene, Yun Mingzi's mouth curled into a disdainful smile. Trying to escape in front of me? As soon as he said that, he took a step forward. Chapter 1979. Yun Mingzi took a step forward, and the space in the distance suddenly split apart. A ray of blood-red light shattered, and then a figure retreated explosively. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian retreated for over 100 kilometers before he stopped, and Yun Mingzi appeared in front of him as soon as he stopped. Yun Mingzi frowned slightly as he looked at Yi Xian. Uneasy. A trace of uneasiness had actually arisen in the depths of his heart when he saw Yi Xian. Moreover, the stronger his killing intent was, the stronger this trace of uneasiness was. He's not simple. Yun Mingzi looked at Yi Xian and didn't attack for a while. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao and the others had arrived. When they saw that Yun Mingzi didn't attack, Xiao Xiao and Zhong Shou's expressions became slightly unsightly. They were worried. Both of them were slightly worried that Yun Mingzi would betray them like the ancestor of the law enforcement sect. Suddenly, Yun Mingzi chuckled. Interesting. He's actually able to make me feel threatened. As he spoke, a wisp of killing intent flashed through his eyes. However, I like to do the opposite. He took a step forward as soon as he finished speaking. As soon as his foot touched the ground, an extremely dreadful force suddenly crushed down from the top of Yi Xian's head. Meanwhile, Yi Xian opened his palm. A ray of sword light shot into the sky. The sword tore through the sky, and the powerful force was instantly shattered. Yun Mingzi's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this, and then he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Bang! Yi Xian was punched into a mysterious origin of space and time. When he fell into the mysterious abyss of space and time, a black space-time divine thunder suddenly struck him. Yi Xian didn't dodge. Bang! The bolt of space-time lightning entered the green profound sword and was completely absorbed. Yun Mingzi frowned slightly. Meanwhile, Zhong Shou hurriedly said, "Martial ancestor, that sword in his hand can disregard space." Sword. Yun Mingzi looked at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. A moment later, a trace of astonishment flashed across his eyes. This sword is indeed extraordinary. As he spoke, he spread out his right hand and pressed down lightly. In an instant, the space where Yi Xian was turned into a huge space-time net. Seeing this scene, Zhong Shou and Xiao Zhao's expressions became slightly unsightly. Damn it, I already said this fellow can ignore space-time, but this Yun Mingzi actually wants to use space-time to deal with Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian still did not dodge. He allowed the space-time net to envelop him. Without any mishap, he absorbed it cleanly. A look of surprise flashed in Yun Mingzi's eyes. It really can ignore any space-time. Interesting. Zhong Shou hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Grandmaster, this person's bloodline is extremely special. The longer it lasts, the stronger he becomes." What he meant was, hurry up and King kill him. Yun Mingzi gazed at Zhong Shou. "Are you teaching me how to do things?" His voice was icy cold and pierced through the heart. Zhong Shou's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, "I wouldn't dare." Yun Mingzi glanced at Zhong Shou, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. He was about to speak when a blood-red sword stabbed towards him like a thunderclap. A trace of disdain flashed in Yun Mingzi's eyes, and then he clamped his fingers together. Bang! The green profound sword was clamped, but in the next moment his expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly let go of the green profound sword before retreating explosively. Because at the instant he clamped Yi Xian's sword, the green profound sword was actually absorbing him. It can even devour souls? A trace of disbelief flashed in Yun Mingzi's eyes. Meanwhile, Yi Xian appeared in front of him once more, and then a sword slashed down from above his head. Space-time was torn apart. A wisp of ruthlessness flashed in Yun Mingzi's eyes. He flicked his sleeve, and a powerful force surged out. Bang! That force forcefully resisted Yi Xian's green profound sword. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously. Bang! A wave of monstrous killing intent and evil energy instantly enveloped Yun Mengzi, and the impact of the powerful killing intent and evil energy caused Yun Mengzi's mind to become dazed. However, it was at this instant that Yi Xian's green profound sword suddenly entered Yun Mengzi's head. Yun Mengzi was stunned. Zhong Shou and the others were stunned as well. It's gone just like that? Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly retreated over 100 m while his green profound sword was madly devouring Yun Mengzi's soul. Yun Mengzi gazed at Yi Xian with a savage expression. Just you wait. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly gave him the middle finger. Yun Mengzi instantly went berserk, and he roared like a wild beast. How dare you look down on me? The green profound sword suddenly trembled violently, and then it completely absorbed Yun Mengzi's soul. After it absorbed Yun Mengzi's soul, the green profound sword directly transformed into a sword light and returned to Yi Xian's hand. It's gone. At the side, Zhong Shou and the others were silent. Yi Xian's strength was growing every moment, and there really was no limit. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Zhong Shou and the others, and a trace of fear flashed in Zhong Shou's eyes. Retreat. He didn't want to fight anymore. Because he couldn't win. Without the slightest hesitation, Zhong Shou led the remaining experts of Yunjie and turned to flee. However, Xiao Xiao didn't flee. Xiao Xiao just stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I know you're not crazy, and I also know that I will die without a doubt. Before I die, I want to see the person behind you. This request. A blood sword suddenly pierced through his brows, and a stream of blood spurted out from the back of his head. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. Not worthy. With that, he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distance. The green profound sword crazily devoured Xiao Zhao's soul, and a moment later, the green profound sword suddenly turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distance. Xiao Xiao no longer existed in this world. Yi Xian didn't chase after Zhong Shou and the others, but directly went to the law enforcement sect. At this moment, the law enforcement sect was in chaos, because just a moment ago, the sect leader's soul tablet had shattered, which meant that the sect leader had died. Not only that, all the Daoist realm experts who went out were also gone. Some sharp-eyed ones had already fled, but there were still some who didn't. On this day, a blood sword suddenly flew into the law enforcement sect, and the next moment, a series of miserable screams rang out. Yi Xian stood in the sky above the law enforcement sect, his eyes closed, and waves of blood gushed out from his body. Soon, the sky above the law enforcement sect was turned into a sea of blood. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young lord, are you crazy?" In fact, Xiaota also couldn't figure out whether Yi Xian was crazy or not. If you said he was crazy, he was very cunning and even knew how to mock people, but if you said he was not crazy, he could feel that Yi Xian had completely activated the power of bloodline. Yi Xian didn't respond to Xiaota, his eyes closed, and if you looked closely, you could see that his body was trembling slightly. Xiaota continued to ask, "Young lord, are you really crazy or pretending to be crazy?" At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and Xiaota appeared in his hand. Xiaota hurriedly said, "Young lord, what are you doing?" He knew how terrifying the crazy demon bloodline was, and when his master activated the bloodline, he really didn't recognize his own family. Yi Xian didn't attack, and he just looked at Xiaota. His eyes were like a sea of blood, and it was extremely terrifying. When he saw that Yi Xian didn't intend to attack, Xiaota relaxed, and he was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly punched Xiaota. Bang! Xiaota was blasted thousands of meters away. A shrill cry resounded from the distant sky. At this moment, Yi Xian vanished on the spot, and in the next moment, he punched Xiaota again. Bang! Xiaota flew out again. In the sky, Xiaota said angrily, "Young lord, are you really crazy or pretending to be crazy?" There was no answer. Yi Xian chased after Xiaota and beat him up. About 15 minutes later, Yi Xian finally stopped. In the sky, Xiaota hid at the side and shivered. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew into his hand. The green profound sword was blood red. Below, There was no one left alive in the entire law enforcement sect. Sect annihilation. Yi Xian kept the green profound sword and turned into a blood-red sword ray, disappearing at the end of the sky. But very quickly, he turned back and appeared in front of Xiao Ta, and then kept Xiao Ta into his body. Then he turned into a blood-red sword ray, disappearing at the end of the sky. In Yi Xian's body, Xiao Ta was confused. Damn? Young lord, are you crazy? Yi Xian did not answer. Xiao Ta was a little annoyed. This young lord might not be crazy. Could it be that I got beaten up for nothing? Should I kill my young lord? Thinking of this, Xiao Ta was shocked by himself. Recently, he seemed to be a little arrogant. Daolin Nation. Nakayama of Silla stood on the city wall. He looked at the sky, and his whole person was a little dazed. Yi Xian killed dozens of Daoist realm experts. This was the news he had just received. Nakayama of Silla was silent. Originally, he thought that the person behind Yi Xian would definitely appear, but he did not expect that the person behind Yi Xian did not appear at all, and Yi Xian alone killed those Daoist realm experts. This was too unbelievable. At this moment, Invicil appeared, and he said in a deep voice, "The law enforcement sect is gone." Nakayama of Silla said softly, "He destroyed it?" Invicil nodded. "He went to Yunjie now." Nakayama of Silla was silent. Invicil was also silent. At this moment he was feeling lucky. In fact, he had wanted to kill Yi Xian at the beginning, and he wanted to intercept the law enforcement sect and Yunjie. He wanted to kill Yi Xian first, and then obtain Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan's inheritance. However, Nakayama of Silla convinced him. Fortunately, he did not do that, or the Invicil pavilion would disappear completely. Invicil looked at Nakayama of Silla. "What should we do next?" Nakayama of Silla laughed. "The law enforcement sect is destroyed, their territory." Invicil hesitated and then said, "That was destroyed by young Master Yi. It's not good for us to go and take it, right?" Nakayama of Silla laughed. "That's easy. We will occupy the territory, and then give him the Supreme God Crystal." Invicil nodded slightly. "All right." Nakayama of Silla was about to speak, but at this moment, a shadow appeared in front of him. It was unknown what the shadow said, but Nakayama of Silla's pupils suddenly shrank. "There's a change." You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.